Chapter 198. Silly girl, am I not by your side? Bailey Han hugged her even tighter. Su Yunqian smiled. Han, what's wrong with you today? Why do you suddenly want to see me? Bailey Han held her shoulders and looked into her eyes. He said seriously, Yunqian, will you marry me? In Xiao Bao's room, Xia Dong and her two children were eavesdropping. Xia Dong angrily jumped up from the sofa and rushed out without a word. She looked like she was going to fight with someone. Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi quickly ran over and hugged her legs. Mommy, don't be rash. Mom, don't be agitated. It's useless even if you rush over now. Dad doesn't remember you. Xia Dong was about to explode. That damned bastard. He was still whispering sweet nothings to her in the morning, and now he was hugging another woman and proposing to her at night. Although his memory was messed up, it was still very infuriating. Let go of me. I'm going to rush in and tell him the truth now. Xiao Yi's pink little ears twitched. Shoo. Listen. They're talking again. Xia Dong's ears also perked up. Su Yunqian acted coquettishly. Han, when you propose, don't you have a ring? Of course I do. Bailey Han paused and said, I originally ordered a ring today, but when I woke up, the ring was gone. Su Yunqian smiled. All right, it's okay that the ring is gone. At least I know how you feel about me. You've agreed to my proposal? Of course, there's no reason not to. Let go of me. Xia Dong couldn't hold it in anymore. If she held it in, her husband would be charged with bigamy. Little Treasure and Little Wingsy let go of their hands in unison and took a step back in unison. Things had gone beyond their control. The scariest thing was that there was a suspicious sound coming from the eavesdropping device. It seemed to be a sound not suitable for children. Xia Dong opened the door and rushed to Bailey Han's room. Her entire body was steaming with anger as she barged into his room in an extremely valiant manner. The next moment, his breathing suddenly stopped. In front of him, Bailey Han and Su Yunqian were hugging each other, their faces close to each other. Her eyes burned with flames as she clenched her fists. Resisting the urge to beat them up, she roared, Bailey Han, stop! Bailey Han's hand froze and he raised his head. After a short moment of shock, he was furious. Why did you come in? Get out. This is the third time you've told me to scram. Seeing that your memory is a mess, I'll tolerate you. Xia Dong glared at him angrily. She strode forward and grabbed his wrist without warning. She was startled. It turned out that he was holding a girder in his hand. So, he was actually helping Su Yunqian put on the girder? Because of the angle, it looked like they were kissing. You crazy woman, what are you trying to do? Bailey Han pulled his wrist back, unable to restrain his anger. Su Yunqian looked coldly at Xia Dong. Damn it, she had ruined her plans again. Xia Dong pointed at his left hand and said coldly, Bailey Han, look at the ring on your left hand. What do you think it means? You're already married, do you know that? Bailey Han let go of Su Yunqian in shock. His gaze fell on his left hand. He had been wondering when he had a ring on his finger. Xia Dong extended her left hand in front of him and said angrily, Take a good look at what this is. Don't you think it's exactly the same as the one on your finger? What's going on? Bailey Han was shocked and angry. When did he get married? Why didn't he know about it? Who was this woman in front of him? There seemed to be something in his brain that suddenly bounced and tightened. It hurt. He held his head in pain and tried hard to think, but he couldn't remember. No, it was getting more and more painful. His vision turned black and he felt dizzy. His body tilted and he fell onto the sofa. Han. Xia Dong and Su Yunqian threw themselves on him at the same time and called out to him anxiously. Xia Dong was anxious and helpless. What should she do? Yes, she should call the doctor. She suddenly jumped up and reached for the phone. Su Yunqian grabbed her wrist and stared at her with a venomous gaze. It's all your fault, Xia Dong. If anything happens to Han, I won't let you off. Now's not the time to talk about this. Xia Dong pushed her arm away and tried hard to calm down as she dialed Su Zhe's number. Old Madame Dowager and the others rushed over when they heard the news. Everyone was anxiously waiting for Su Zhe's arrival. Xiao Yi secretly took out the listening device from the antique vase and hid it in her pocket. Su Zhe carefully examined Bailey Han's body, and listened to old Madame Dowager's description of his situation. He frowned and thought for a moment before saying, "Old Madame Dowager, I want to talk to you alone." "In the study," old Madame Dowager said. "Dr. Su, it's just the two of us now. If you have something to say, just say it." Suja's face was serious. "Old Madame Dowager, from Ahan's current situation, his memory has begun to become chaotic. I suspect that the hypnosis we did on him 5 years ago will soon lose its effect. When that time comes, not only will he regain his memory, but he will also suffer from the pain of his headaches again." Old Madame Dowager said agitatedly, "Then what should we do?" Suja frowned. "I can't think of any good ideas right now. However, if we want to completely cure him, we still have to do surgery to remove the foreign object in his brain." Old Madame Dowager's face was ashen. 5 years ago, the top neurologist in the country examined him and said that the foreign object in his brain was too close to his nerves. If we do surgery to remove it, the success rate is only 1%. If the surgery fails, Ahan will become a vegetable. We can't take this risk. Suja thought for a moment and said, "Perhaps we should tell Ahan about this and let him make his own choice." The choice was to suffer from the pain of his headaches or take the risk of surgery. Old Madame Dowager held her forehead and sighed. "Let me think about it carefully." Xiaodong noticed that after old Madame Dowager and Suja finished talking, she seemed to have aged a lot. She looked tired and dignified, as if she had a lot of things on her mind. Suja couldn't help with Bailey Han's current condition, so he only left some conventional medicine and left. Old Madame Dowager glanced at the room full of people and waved her hand tiredly. "You all go back and rest. Xiao Yi, Xiao Bao, you still have school tomorrow. Go back to your rooms and sleep." Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao looked at each other and then at Bailey Han lying on the bed at the same time. Gi Gai said goodnight to the elders and returned to his room. "Yun Qian, I've troubled you today. You should go back first." Old Madame Dowager patted the back of Su Yunqian's hand. Su Yunqian forced a smile on her face. Her sad expression made people feel pity for her. "Grandma, I'll go back first. If you need anything, you can call me at any time." "Okay, good girl." Old Madame Dowager called a servant and sent Su Yunqian out. Only old Madame Dowager and Xiaodong were left in the room. Old Madame Dowager pointed to the seat beside her. "Xiaodong, sit down. I have something to tell you." Xiaodong sat down. Old Madame Dowager said, "There's something I haven't told you and Ahan. Today, I want to tell you. 5 years ago, Ahan was in a car accident. Not only was his leg injured, but his brain was also injured. At that time, a very small piece of metal flew into his brain." Xiaodong's eyes widened in shock. The blood in her body seemed to have stopped flowing. After examination, the metal piece almost pressed on the nerves, and the surrounding nerves were very complicated. The doctor said that the success rate of removing the metal piece was only 1%. We didn't dare to take the risk, so we gave up on the surgery. Old Madame Dowager sighed and continued, "We didn't expect that disaster would come. Whenever Ahan thought of that car accident and anything related to you, he would start to have a headache. We watched as he suffered from the pain. He couldn't sleep at night and groaned. In less than half a month, he became so thin that he didn't even look human anymore. I discussed it with his father and made a decision." Old Madame Dowager paused. She looked at Xiaodong's shocked eyes and said slowly, "We decided to erase his memory. We hired the best psychiatrist abroad to hypnotize him and erase his past with you. We tampered with his memory and adjusted it to the day before he proposed to Yun Qian. Then, we lied to him and said that he was in a car accident on that day. We also made up a story about Xiao Yi's birth. In short, we completely erased your existence from his memory." Xiaodong leaned against the sofa stiffly. Her chest was filled with complicated emotions. A scary thought came to her mind. She said with difficulty, "Grandma, Ahan's memory suddenly returned to 5 years ago. This isn't a good sign, right?" Old Madame Dowager nodded. Suja said that his memory is starting to become chaotic. The hypnosis might not last much longer. Xiaodong's voice trembled. "Will he have a headache again after he recovers his memory?" "He was already having a headache now." "It's very possible." "Grandma, what do you want me to do?" "Ahan can't be stimulated at the moment." "Xiaodong, if Ahan's memory is still stuck 5 years ago after he wakes up, I hope you won't tell him the truth, and don't tell him about the past. Old Madame Dowager reached out and grabbed Xiaodong's wrist. Let him go with the flow. Let him hold on for as long as he can. Tears filled old Madame Dowager's eyes. Other than this, I can't think of any other way. Xiaodong's tears fell like rain. Grandma, I understand. No matter what happens, I won't tell him the truth. I won't force him or agitate him anymore. Even if Han and Su Yunqian reconciled, even if he proposed to her, even if they wanted to get married, she wouldn't stop it because she didn't want him to suffer anymore. He had suffered enough for the past 5 years. Add Song Shu 566. Chapter 199. Thank you, Xiaodong. You've been wronged. Old Madame's tears rolled down her cheeks. Xiaodong bit her lip and sobbed. For Xiaodong, this was a sleepless night. For Lin Shihao, this night had just begun. At a 5-star hotel. A medical seminar was being held here. As the main speaker, Lin Shihao spoke frankly and confidently on stage. His warm smile was like the sun shining into Bai Meiwei's heart as she sat in the first row. It was as if she was possessed. She was deeply infatuated with him and couldn't extricate herself. When the speech ended, the audience applauded. The organizer of this seminar was a government department. After the seminar ended, the staff warmly invited all the attendees to the banquet hall for a cocktail party. Lin Shihao could be said to be a young talent. He was also well known in the industry and was known as the god of gynecology. Many people in the industry came to toast him. His alcohol tolerance wasn't very good, so he would decline if he could, but if he really couldn't, he would stop after a sip. Even so, he still drank a lot of alcohol that night. By the end of the cocktail party, he was already drunk. He sat on the sofa and held his forehead. His eyes were blurry as he took out his phone to call Yi Siki. However, his phone was snatched away. He narrowed his eyes and looked up. A beautiful figure stood in front of him and bent over to look at him. The person's low-cut dress revealed a deep cleavage. He closed his eyes and leaned back on the sofa. In a drunken voice he said, Mei Wei, please take me home. I'm drunk. Okay. Bai Meiwei sat beside him and held the glass in her hand in front of him. Senior, drink a glass of cold water first to sober up. He looked at her in a daze and couldn't even hold the glass steadily. She directly held his hand and held the glass to his lips to help him drink. Seeing him swallow the glass of water without leaving a single drop behind, a strange smile appeared in Bai Meiwei's beautiful eyes. Senior, be careful. I'll help you back, Bai Meiwei said gently. She held his arm and helped him up from the sofa. Lin Shihao's head was getting dizzier and dizzier. He staggered and leaned all his weight on her until he completely lost consciousness and fell limply on her shoulder. A male waiter came forward and asked, Ma'am, do you need help? Bai Meiwei glanced at Lin Shihao, who was lying on her shoulder, and smiled. Sorry to trouble you. I've booked room 713. Okay. The waiter supported Lin Shihao and helped him to the elevator. Bai Meiwei leisurely followed behind. The waiter carried Lin Shihao into the room and placed him on the bed. Bai Meiwei took out a tip and said with a smile, Thank you for your hard work. The waiter smiled politely. You're welcome, madam. Good night. Good night. Bang! The door closed. Bai Meiwei slowly walked to the bedside and looked down at Lin Shihao, who was in deep sleep. He had handsome features. His handsome eyebrows were relaxed, his nose was high, and his thin lips were slightly pursed. She had been obsessed with that face for a long time. She bent over, her cheeks burning as she leaned against his chest. His broad chest and the steady beating of his heart made her feel at ease. He seemed to be uncomfortable from being pressed against by her. He frowned and murmured softly, Siki, Siki Yi Siki. Even when he was asleep, he still remembered her. Bai Meiwei's eyes were filled with anger. The last bit of hesitation and shyness in her heart disappeared. She wanted to have him, even if she had to resort to unscrupulous means. Walala! The hot water flowed as Bai Meiwei carefully washed her body in the bathroom. Not a single inch of skin was left untouched. In a while, she would give herself to the man she loved the most. Her heart was thumping wildly. She didn't know that in the guest room, Lin Shihao's phone was ringing. Yi Siki was a little uneasy. She called Lin Shihao's phone twice, but no one answered. The seminar should have ended at 9 o'clock, but it was already 10 o'clock. Why wasn't he back yet? He didn't even call back? Could something have happened to him? Yi Siki remembered that the person who went to the seminar with Lin Shihao was Bai Mei Wei. Unfortunately, she didn't have Bai Mei Wei's phone number, so she couldn't ask her. What should she do? She paced back and forth in the room uneasily. Suddenly, she remembered that there must be Bai Mei Wei's private phone number in the on-call room, so she called the on-call room. She gave a simple explanation, and the people in the on-call room gave her Bai Mei Wei's private phone number. Beep, beep, beep. She called Bai Mei Wei's phone twice, but no one answered. Yi Siki didn't give up and called a third time. Finally, the phone was picked up. She heard a woman's languid voice. Hello, who is this? Hello, is this Dr. Bai Mei Wei? That's me. Who are you? Bai Mei Wei asked as she dried her hair. Yi Siki paused and said, My name is Yi Siki. I'm Lin Shihao's wife. I want to ask if the seminar you attended tonight has ended? Bai Mei Wei's fingers tightened. After a while, she laughed softly. So it's Senior's wife. The seminar has ended. Is there something you need? Old Lin hasn't come back yet, and I can't get through to his phone. I'm worried that something has happened to him. Dr. Bai, do you know his situation? Bai Mei Wei glanced at Lin Shihao, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. Her lips curled into a strange smile as she said lightly, I'm with Senior. Don't worry. Nothing happened to him. Yi Siki's anxious heart relaxed. That's good. Are you on the way back now? Bai Mei Wei smiled. Yes, we're in the car. Senior said that he would send me home first. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry to have made you worry. It's okay. It's only right that old Lin send you home. Although the two of them hadn't picked up the phone for a long time, which made Yi Siki feel a little strange, she didn't think too much about it. She smiled and said, Dr. Bai. But before she could calm down, the part of him that was inside her body rose up again, and another round of passion began. The next morning, the glaring sunlight shone through the window. Lin Shihao frowned impatiently. He turned over and reached out to hug the person beside him. After sleeping for a few more minutes, his head slowly cleared up. He held his forehead with one hand and muttered softly, Honey, my head hurts. The response he got was a soft sob. Lin Shihao suddenly opened his eyes. He saw a woman's naked back. Her fair skin was covered with bruises. She was curled up into a ball and sobbing softly. Her shoulders were trembling slightly. His eyes widened in shock. She wasn't his wife. Who was she? He reached out his trembling hand and slowly pulled her shoulders back. His heart suddenly fell to the bottom of the valley. He cried out involuntarily, Mei Wei. Bai Mei Wei's cheeks were covered with tear stains. Her eyes were red and swollen, and even her lips were red and swollen. Her chest and neck were full of marks from lovemaking. She covered her face and cried sadly, Senior, how did this happen? How did we end up together? Lin Shihao's face was ashen. He was about to break down. He betrayed Siki. He actually betrayed his wife. Senior, you were drunk last night. I drank too much too and couldn't drive. I wanted to help you in to rest for a while, but I didn't expect you. You. Bai Mei Wei's tears kept falling. She cried until she was out of breath. Lin Shihao tried hard to remember, but his mind was blank. He had no idea what happened last night. His usually gentle face revealed a panicked expression. He jumped out of bed in a panic, found his clothes in a pile of messy clothes, and hurriedly put them on. Come and see. Hongcha 866. Chapter 200. Siki must have been worried to death that he hadn't returned the entire night. It was as if he had gone mad. There was only one thing left in his mind, and that was to go home. He had to go home quickly. Lin Shihao grabbed his things and hurriedly ran out. Bai Mei Wei jumped down from the bed and hugged him tightly. She was sobbing. Senior, you can't leave like this. What should I do? Lin Shihao's fiery heart cooled down in an instant. He turned his head stiffly and looked at Bai Mei Wei. Her eyes were red and swollen like peaches, and they were filled with tears. Her frail body was covered with marks, constantly reminding him of what had happened last night. He was like a stone statue, instantly losing his life force. Senior, Bai Mei Wei threw herself into his arms, crying bitterly. He was like a walking corpse, allowing her to hug and shake him. After a long, long time, his consciousness gradually returned. His gaze was unfocused as it swept across the messy bed. There were still bright red marks on the sheets. He slowly closed his eyes, then slowly opened them again. With difficulty he said, "Mei Wei, I'm sorry. I hurt you." Bai Mei Wei hugged him tightly, sobbing. Her crying made his heart hurt and confused. He helplessly patted her back. "Mei Wei, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Senior. Senior." Bai Mei Wei cried for a long time before she finally raised her head. She choked out, I don't blame you. Let's just pretend that nothing happened." Lin Shihao felt extremely guilty. "Mei Wei, thank you." She shook her head as tears streamed down her face. "Senior, I don't want to ruin your relationship with sister-in-law. I'm satisfied as long as you're happy. Let me be by your side, silently waiting for you." Lin Shihao was both touched and guilty. He hugged her tightly. Bai Mei Wei wiped the tears from her face. "Senior, if sister-in-law asks, just say that you were drunk last night and rested at my house for the whole night. Don't worry, if sister-in-law asks, I'll help you." "Thank you, Mei Wei." Lin Shihao's throat moved, his voice low and hoarse. After Lin Shihao and Bai Mei Wei tidied up, they walked out of the hotel one after another. He sat in the car and took out his phone. He didn't know when, but his phone had been turned off. He turned it on and saw many missed calls from Siki, as well as text messages from her. Her concern for him were evident in every message she sent him. His heart suddenly ached, and he punched the steering wheel hard. 2 drops of tears fell from the 1.8-meter-tall man's eyes. As soon as Lin Shihao inserted the key into the keyhole, Yi Siki jumped down from the sofa. The moment he turned the doorknob, the door suddenly opened from the inside. "Hubby, where did you go? I called you, but you didn't pick up. I was so worried." Yi Siki threw herself into Lin Shihao's arms. Her eyes were red, and it was obvious that she hadn't slept all night. Lin Shihao hugged her tightly and said over and over again, "I'm sorry, wifey, I'm sorry." "Hubby, where did you go? Did something happen?" Yi Siki withdrew from his arms and checked carefully. Seeing that he wasn't hurt, she relaxed a little. Lin Shihao forced a smile and hesitated for a long time before telling the lie he had made up. "I'm sorry, wifey. I got drunk last night and rested at Director Bai's house for the whole night." Yi Siki complained, "Why didn't you call me? I was about to call the police, you know?" "I'm sorry, wifey, I'm sorry. I fell asleep after getting in the car last night. I don't even know how I ended up at the director's house." He hugged her tightly, his heart filled with guilt. The two of them hugged for a long time before he whispered, "Wifey, I'm very tired. I want to take a shower." Yi Siki patted his back and said gently, "Okay, I'll go turn on the hot water for you." Lin Shihao sat on the sofa dejectedly. He held his head in his hands and listened to the sound of the hot water running in the bathroom. His heart was in a mess. Guilt wrapped around him tightly, and he almost couldn't breathe. "Hubby, I'm done. I've put the clothes on the rack. Go in quickly." He took a deep breath and looked up slowly. He smiled gently and said, "Okay." Xiaodong suddenly woke up. Her dark eyes were filled with fear, and her forehead was covered with sweat. She hurriedly put on her slippers and ran down the corridor in a panic towards Bailey Han's room. She had a nightmare. She dreamed of a grand wedding. She was wearing a beautiful wedding dress and holding flowers in her hands, waiting for the groom to hold her hand. However, after waiting for a long time, Bailey Han held Su Yunqian's arm and walked slowly to the priest. They looked at each other affectionately, as if she didn't exist. She couldn't take it lying down. She pounced forward and called out Bailey Han's name. Bailey Han turned around to look at her. He suddenly held his head and howled in pain. Soon, he fell to the ground and didn't move anymore. No, she wouldn't let this happen. She wouldn't. Xiaodong suddenly opened the door. Bailey Han's handsome figure was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. His back was facing the window, and when he heard the sound, he suddenly turned around. She stared at him blankly. She wanted to call out to him, but she resisted. No, she had to pretend that she didn't know him. Bailey Han's handsome face was expressionless. He walked towards her step by step, staring at her with his deep eyes. Xia Dong bit her lip and forced a smile. She stammered, "Why, eldest young master? You're awake." Bailey Han's face darkened. She explained in a panic, "Eldest young master, don't be angry. Old madam asked me to check if you've woken up. It's good that you've woken up. I'll leave now." She turned around to leave, in case he was unhappy to see her here. However, her wrist suddenly tightened and she was pulled into his embrace. She stiffened in his embrace, not daring to speak or move for fear of agitating him. Bailey Han lowered his head to look at the stiffened woman in his arms. His face darkened even more. He frowned and his voice was cold and filled with anger. "Are you that afraid of me?" Xia Dong lowered her eyes and stared at his toes. She said softly, "No." "Then why did you run away when you saw me?" Her throat tightened. "You didn't want to see me." His brows furrowed and his eyes were cold. "When did I say that I didn't want to see you?" She felt wronged. Yesterday. Within a day, he had asked her to get lost twice. Bailey Han's frown deepened. He felt uncomfortable looking at the top of her head. He reached out and lifted her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes. "You haven't explained why Mika Kito kissed you. How could I not want to see you?" When he woke up and she wasn't by his side, his first thought was that she had left with Mika Kito. But he refused to give up, so he stood in front of the window, wanting to see if she was outside. At this moment, she suddenly pushed open the door and entered. Ecstasy surged into her heart, and before he could ask her to explain, she impatiently said a bunch of strange things. Xia Dong looked at him in shock. You know my Bailey Han?" Bailey Han was so angry that he almost laughed. What did she mean by knowing her Bailey Han? Wait a minute. His pupils suddenly shrank. "Wifey, what do you mean by that?" Xia Dong had already confirmed that the person standing in front of her was the Bailey Han with normal memories. She quickly shook her head. "No, I didn't mean anything. Hubby, I'll explain now. Yesterday, Brother Shen asked me to go out. I was afraid that it would cause a misunderstanding, so I didn't tell anyone and went out to see him alone." Xia Dong was afraid that there would be a rift between them because of what happened yesterday, so she didn't hide anything and told him everything, including how Mika Kito had forced a kiss on her. Bailey Han felt a little better knowing that she hadn't been willing to be kissed. However, his brows were still furrowed. He stroked her red lips with his fingers and said domineeringly, "I'm the only one who can kiss you here." She hesitated for a moment, then stood on her tiptoes and gently kissed him on the lips. His anger suddenly dissipated, and an unnatural color appeared on his face. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to kiss him. He hugged her tightly. The moment she pulled away, he kissed her lips. As if he was punishing her, he gently bit and sucked on her lips. Xia Dong quietly leaned into his arms. She suddenly felt that this was the happiness she had been pursuing. However, this happiness was very fragile. It was like a soap bubble that only needed to be gently poked with a finger and it would burst with a bang. However, even if it was fragile, she didn't want to let go. She tightly hugged his waist and boldly expressed her feelings. "Hubby, I love you." Ecstasy sprayed in Bailey Han's heart like a fountain. He had always been calm and collected, but his fingers were trembling. He hugged her tightly and said in a hoarse voice, "Wifey, I love you too." Xia Dong's eyes were sore. There was a transparent liquid flowing down, but Bailey Han didn't see it. Bailey Han had woken up. The whole family was prepared to treat him like a porcelain doll, but they didn't expect that his memory would suddenly return to normal. Under the old madam's strict order, no one mentioned yesterday's incident. Bailey Han also didn't know that his memory had returned to 5 years ago. On the surface, everything had returned to normal. Only a few people who knew the inside story had a heavy heart. It turned out that Bailey Han's memory was already unstable, and the hypnosis couldn't last much longer. Xia Dong helped him tie his tie and stood at the gate, watching him drive to the company. She only looked away when the car drove out of the manor and couldn't be seen anymore. She didn't know when Bailey Jing had appeared beside her. "Xiaodong, I want to talk to you." Xia Dong turned around and smiled. "Okay, but I have to take the children to kindergarten first." Bailey Jing also smiled. "I'll go out with you. I happen to have something to do too." Xiao Bao was wearing a small suit and carrying a small school bag. He ran down the stairs. Behind him, Xiao Yi walked leisurely with her chest out and head raised. "Mom, we're ready. Let's go. Xiao Bao ran to their side and only greeted Xia Dong. He ignored Bailey Jing. Obviously, he was still angry about Bailey Jing speaking rudely to his mother yesterday. Come and see. Xinwu 799. Chapter 201. Bailey E, who walked over, was much more polite and called her Aunt Jing sweetly. Xia Dong smiled and said, "Since you're ready, let's go." Bailey Jing accompanied Xia Dong to send the two kids to the kindergarten. After that, Bailey Jing said, "How about we go to the cafe?" Xia Dong knew that she had something to say, so she naturally agreed. The cafe's environment was very elegant. Since it was still early, there were very few people inside, so it was just right for them to talk. Xia Dong stirred the fragrant milk tea in her cup. "Xiao Jing, what do you want to know? Just ask." Bailey Jing raised her eyebrows and went straight to the point. "Xingchen's disfigurement, was it because of you?" Xia Dong was very surprised. She thought that she was going to ask about her and her brother, but she didn't expect her to ask about this. She thought for a moment and said, "Strictly speaking, it was related to me, but I didn't cause her disfigurement." "Tell me about it." Bailey Jing leaned back and listened carefully. "It's very complicated. To put it simply, Su Xingchen wanted to harm me, but it was exposed and my friend took revenge on her. She then turned around to take revenge on me and wanted to pour acid on me. In the end, an accident happened during the fight and the acid splashed on her." Bailey Jing frowned and asked, "Was Su Yunqian present at that time?" Xia Dong nodded. "Yes." Bailey Jing's gaze was sharp. "As far as I know, Xingchen didn't hurt you. She was framed by Su Yunqian. She didn't want to take revenge on you that day, but wanted to deal with Su Yunqian. In the end, you snatched the acid from her hand and splashed it on her." Xia Dong was stunned. "I don't know if Su Xingchen was framed by Su Yunqian, but she did want to deal with me and Su Yunqian that day. I didn't snatch the acid from her hand, nor did I deliberately splash it on her. In fact, if my bodyguard didn't arrive in time that day and fought with Su Xingchen, I would be the one disfigured now." Bailey Jing frowned. Xia Dong and Fei Yan's words were completely different. Between the two of them, one of them must be lying. Although personally, she believed Fei Yan's words more, she didn't lose her mind. If she didn't investigate this matter clearly, she wouldn't accuse anyone wrongly. Bailey Jing's expression was serious. "Xia Dong, do you have evidence to prove that you're not lying?" Xia Dong frowned slightly. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "When it happened, we were in the changing room behind the church. There was a camera installed in the corridor outside the changing room. When Lu Xing broke in, the door was opened. He and Su Xingchen were entangled at the door, so the camera recorded the situation. This was also an important piece of evidence for the police to convict Su Xingchen of intentional injury. As long as you see the video, you'll know if I'm lying or not. But criminal evidence is kept by the Public Security Department. How can we see the video?" Bailey Jing thought. Xia Dong coughed and said, "Actually, the surveillance camera in the church should still have a record." Bailey Jing patted her forehead and smiled. "How could I forget? This is much easier. Xiao Yi is a hacker expert." Xia Dong was surprised. She never knew that Xiao Yi was also a hacker. Bailey Jing raised her eyebrows in amusement. "Don't tell me you still don't know?" Xia Dong smiled bitterly. "I really don't know. I've been separated from Xiao Yi for more than 4 years. I feel like I don't understand him at all. I'm a failure of a mother." "No, I think you're amazing." Bailey Jing looked into her eyes and said seriously, "I admire you for raising 2 children alone." Xia Dong smiled. "I thought you hated me." Bailey Jing shrugged. "At first, I hated you. But after hearing about your experience, I think you're amazing. You're a good mother." Her straightforward words touched Xia Dong. "Thank you." She smiled and said, "Don't be in a hurry to thank me. If it turns out that you really hurt my friends, I'll still hate you." Xia Dong smiled. She really appreciated Bailey Jing's personality more and more. She was straightforward and cheerful. The two agreed to ask Xiao Yi to help pull up the surveillance video of the church at night. Then they parted happily. Bailey Jing left the family car to Xia Dong and rented it herself. She took out a business card from her handbag and pointed to the address on it. She asked the taxi driver to send her to the location. Xiaodong hadn't seen Yi Siki for a few days. She missed her, so she wanted to ask her out to relax. Guangmao Building. Lang Yu Psychological Consulting Firm. Seeing someone coming, the beautiful receptionist Miss smiled politely. Hello, Mississippi. How can I help you? Bailey Jing took off her sunglasses and pushed her hair behind her ear. Hello, I want to see Dr. Lin Yi. Do you have an appointment? No. Miss smiled apologetically. I'm very sorry. Dr. Lin's appointments are full today. Bailey Jing's lips curled up, revealing a dazzling smile. I only need to delay him for 5 minutes. Please help me arrange it. I'm really sorry. I can't help you. Bailey Jing raised her eyebrows. Okay, I'll talk to him myself. She walked to the lounge and sat down. She took out her phone and dialed the number on the business card. After 3 rings, the phone was picked up. A man's gentle and magnetic voice came through. Hello, I'm Lin Yi. She smiled. Hello, I'm Bailey Jing. I want to take 5 minutes of your time. How is Dr. Lin? Lin Yi glanced at the counselor sitting on the sofa. I'm not free now. If you don't mind, you can wait for half an hour. Okay, I'll wait for half an hour. I won't disturb your work. See you later. See you later. Lin Yi curled his lips and hung up the phone. Bailey Jing sat in the lounge, playing a game on her phone. She was having a good time when she heard the door to Lin Yi's office open. A beautiful 17 or 18-year-old girl walked out. Her face was abnormally pale and her lips lacked color, but there was a faint smile on her face. She looked straight ahead as she walked towards the elevator. The moment she raised her hand to press the elevator button, Bailey Jing noticed that there were several scars on her wrist. Bailey Jing blinked and stood up. She turned around and saw Lin Yi in a black suit standing a few steps away from her. There was a gentle smile on his handsome face. Sorry to keep you waiting. She smiled generously. It's okay. It wasn't long. She was wearing a bohemian-style long dress today. Her wine-red hair was let down casually. Her beautiful eyes sparkled with a bright smile. She looked bright and charming. He reached out his hand. Please come in. Thank you. The office was decorated very warmly. It didn't feel rigid at all. Lin Yi lowered his guard the moment he walked in. Bailey Jing sat casually on the sofa and pulled out a check from her handbag. She pushed it in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi, thank you for helping me out yesterday. Here's the money for the dress. Please accept it. Lin Yi had a rough understanding of her personality from their 2 conversations. He knew that she was a straightforward person. He didn't reject her. He smiled. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Bailey Miss, if I may ask, do you have an older brother named Bailey Yun? She raised an eyebrow in surprise. How did you know? He's my second brother. Lin Yi's smile widened. I'm in the same university as Yun. I'm 2 grades higher than him. She was pleasantly surprised. So you're my second brother senior. What a coincidence. He smiled. Yun went to America recently. How's he doing there? He hasn't contacted me yet. She smiled happily, revealing her beautiful white teeth. I talked to him on the phone before I came back. He's doing well now. He started a company with his friends. It's on the right track. That's good. He's finally willing to work hard. Lin Yi hoped that Bailey Yun could walk out of the pain of heartbreak as soon as possible. The 2 of them chatted for a while more before Bailey Jing suddenly remembered the girl she saw earlier. She asked curiously, that patient of yours, I saw a scar on her wrist. Does she have symptoms of depression? The scar is also a sign of self-harm, isn't it? Lin Yi smiled apologetically. I'm sorry. I can't reveal anything about the patient. It was his professional ethics as a psychiatrist. Bailey Jing waved her hand embarrassedly. It's okay. I'm just too curious. She looked down at her watch. It seems like 5 minutes have passed. I won't disturb your work anymore. Goodbye. Okay. Let's talk when we have time. It was nice meeting you. She smiled and shook his hand. Me too. He walked her to the door and saw her walking towards the stairs. He reminded her, the elevator is over there. She smiled and waved. I'll take the stairs. What a special girl. After all, this was the 12th floor. There was a smile on his lips as he watched her beautiful figure disappear into the corridor. He pondered for 2 seconds, then walked to the front desk and asked, "Did that lady just come up the stairs?" Lin Yi's eyes darkened when he heard the affirmative answer. It was understandable for her to take the stairs downstairs, but it seemed a little strange for her to take the stairs up to the 12th floor. He thought about it again. Maybe she wanted to train her body. He shook his head in amusement. Maybe it was because she was Yun's sister. That was why he paid so much attention to her. Asterisk on the bench in Central Park, Xia Dong was about to fall asleep from boredom when Yi Siki rushed over. Xia Dong rolled her eyes. "Yezi, you stood me up for an hour." "An hour? Do you know how precious an hour's time is?" Yi Siki put her hands together. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Old Lin is home today, so I made lunch for him before coming out." Awesome novel. Hongcha 866. Chapter 202. Xia Dong poked her forehead in annoyance. "You really treat your husband like a bodhisattva." Yi Siki massaged her shoulders in an attempt to please her. "Don't be angry, baby. Elder Lin had it tough too. He attended a seminar last night and got drunk. His head still hurts now." All right. Stop acting like a lackey. You scared my baby, do you know that?" Xia Dong pulled her arm and made her sit beside her. She took out a tissue and handed it to her. "Hurry and wipe your sweat. Your face is red from the sun." She knew that she had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Yi Siki smiled as she took the tissue and wiped the sweat off her face. Xia Dong leaned against the chair lazily. "Your elder Lin attended the seminar last night. Did he go with Bai Mei Wei again?" "Yeah. He got drunk last night and even stayed at the dean's house. The dean treats elder Lin quite well." Yi Siki finished wiping her sweat and threw the tissue into the bin. Xia Dong recalled the incident where Lin Shihao and Bai Mei Wei took a walk on the beach. She half-joked. He dared to drink when he was with another woman? Wasn't he afraid that someone would do something to him? Yi Siki knocked on her forehead. "What nonsense are you talking about? Bai Mei Wei isn't that kind of person." "How do you know?" Xia Dong looked up at her. "You know Bai Mei Wei very well?" "I can't say that I know her well. I've seen her twice. I think she's well-educated and well-mannered. She doesn't seem like the kind of woman who would do something like that." Xia Dong raised her eyebrows. "Appearance doesn't explain everything. Look at Su Xingchen. Isn't he naive and cute? Can you imagine that she's actually ruthless and inhumane?" Yi Siki choked on her words. Xia Dong made sense, but Yi Siki still felt that her husband was trustworthy. She believed that he wouldn't do anything to betray her. She smiled. "Let's not talk about me. Why are you in the mood to stroll around today?" The smile in Xia Dong's eyes gradually faded. She hugged her and said, "Yezi, actually, I'm here today to seek comfort." What happened?" Yi Siki patted her on the back. Xia Dong told her everything that had happened yesterday. It took her a while to react. She sighed and said, "Mika Kito has loved you for 5 years. Now that you're married, it's inevitable that he'll be sad. Maybe he'll get better after some time. As for your Bailey Han, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted to talk to you. I'm fine now. Everything is fine." Xia Dong let go of her and grinned. She felt much better after saying it out loud. She was filled with courage, the courage to face the future. Yi Siki teased her, "That's good. You're a cockroach that won't die." They strolled around the park, had lunch together, and went to watch a comedy movie. The two of them laughed so hard in the dark that tears rolled down their cheeks. After leaving the movie theater, they said goodbye and went back to their respective homes. Yi Siki received a call from Lin Shihao. He said that there was a last-minute surgery at the hospital and that he had to rush to the hospital. He would also be back a little late. After dinner, Lin Shihao still hadn't returned. Yi Siki took the clothes he had changed out of in the morning and was about to put them in the washing machine to wash. However, she found a long strand of hair on his jacket. This strand of hair was definitely not hers. Her hair wasn't that long. Her heart clenched. Her fingers trembled as she checked the rest of his clothes. She saw a bright lipstick mark on the back of his white shirt. Her heart almost stopped beating. She suddenly remembered what Xiaodong had said. Lin Shihao was with Bai Mei Wei last night and they were both drunk. Could something have happened? No, that was impossible. Old Lin wouldn't lie to her. But how could she explain the hair and lipstick mark on his shirt? Yi Siki's hands and feet turned cold. Her legs went weak as she sat on the cold floor in a daze. She didn't even seem to hear her daughter running over to call her. Nyo pushed her arm in fear. Mommy, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Yi Siki's mind went blank. Her eyes lost their light as she stared at the shirt in her hands. The bright lipstick mark was like a bloodstain that flowed deeply into her heart. Mommy, what's wrong? Nyo called out for a long time. But her mommy didn't respond. She was so scared that she started crying. Her cries pierced Yi Siki's eardrums like needles. She suddenly came back to her senses and hugged her crying daughter. Nyo, what's wrong? Mommy, you were so scary just now. You didn't move at all. No matter how I called you, you didn't respond. Boo-hoo. It's okay. Mommy is fine. Nyo, don't be afraid. Yi Siki hugged her daughter's small body tightly. She suppressed her uneasiness and coaxed her daughter to sleep. Then she changed her clothes, grabbed her handbag, and hurried out. She didn't know why she had to go to the hospital, but she just couldn't control her legs. She wanted to go to the hospital to have a look. The sound of her footsteps was particularly clear in the empty hospital corridor. She ran all the way to the door of the gynecology department. She bent over and held her knees with both hands as she gasped for breath. The lights in the operating room were still on. The operation wasn't over yet. Yi Siki planned to go to the washroom to tidy herself up. She was sweating profusely and looked a little disheveled. When she came out of the washroom, the lights in the operating room were already off. The nurse had already pushed the patient into the ward, and Lin Shihao was nowhere to be seen. She stood in front of his office door. Like a thief, she secretly opened the door a crack. Through the crack, Yi Siki saw Lin Shihao standing with a woman in a white coat. The woman's back was facing the door, so Yi Siki couldn't see clearly who it was. But from her voice, Yi Siki could tell that she was Bai Mei Wei. Bai Mei Wei said gently, "Senior sister-in-law didn't suspect anything, did she?" Lin Shihao was silent for a moment before he said, "No, Mei Wei. I should go back now." Bai Mei Wei grabbed his wrist and said, "Senior, can you take me home? I'm still feeling a little unwell." Lin Shihao blushed and pulled her hand away from his wrist. "Okay, I'll take you home." He walked over to the clothes rack. He was probably going to change his clothes. Yi Siki, who was outside the door, was confused. Suspicion? What did Bai Mei Wei mean by suspicion? Could she be referring to that strand of hair and the lipstick mark? Did they really do something to let her down? The footsteps were getting closer and closer to the door. She quickly hid behind the trash can. Lin Shihao and Bai Mei Wei walked out of the office one after another. They didn't look back, so they didn't see Yi Siki hiding behind the trash can. Yi Siki followed them from a distance. She hid behind the stone pillar and watched as they got into the same car. Bai Mei Wei was laughing and saying something. She took out her phone with trembling hands and dialed Lin Shihao's number. She saw him pick up the phone. "Hubby, are you coming back soon?" She tried her best to make her voice sound calm. Lin Shihao paused and said, "The surgery just ended. I still have to check on the patient's condition, so I'll be back a little late. You and Nyo should sleep first." "Okay, I got it." She didn't even say goodbye and hung up the phone in a hurry. Tears streamed down her face. In the past, Lin Shihao would tell her the truth no matter who he was with, even if it was a woman. He would never lie to her. Now, he was clearly with Bai Mei Wei, but he lied to her that he was still working. This meant that he had a guilty conscience. It was very likely that he had done something to let her down. The car sped away. Yi Siki leaned against the stone pillar with tears streaming down her face. Her heart was about to break. She didn't know how she got home. When she opened the door, the room was pitch black. Lin Shihao hadn't returned yet. She locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the tap, and cried bitterly. When she came out of the bathroom, her eyes were red and swollen. Her tears had dried up. She hugged her legs and sat on the bed, not knowing what to do. She should ask clearly whether it had happened or not, right? But if it had really happened and it was completely exposed, what should she do? Divorce him? From dating to marriage, she had loved this man for 8 whole years. How difficult would it be to divorce him? And what about Nyonyo? Her mind was in a mess. Perhaps she should just pretend that nothing had happened. When Lin Shihao came back, it was already 1 in the morning. When Yi Siki heard him open the door, she pretended to be asleep and turned with her back to the door. After he finished showering, he quietly climbed into bed. If it was in the past, he would have pulled her into his arms and hugged her to sleep. But this time, he didn't. Yi Siki felt that her back was empty. It was only September, but it was bone-chillingly cold. The next morning, Yi Siki specially wore a new dress that she had bought a few days ago and put on light makeup. When she sent Lin Shihao and Nyonyo out, she smiled brightly and waved her hand to ask him to drive carefully. Lin Shihao was full of guilt towards her. His eyes flickered as he hurriedly said goodbye and carried Nyonyo into the car. Aya, Nyonyo's mother, you went downstairs to send Nyonyo's father to work again. You two are really loving. The neighbor upstairs saw Yi Siki and laughed teasingly. Yi Siki forced a smile and said, No, Sis Wu, don't laugh at me. Sis Wu smiled and said, You're wearing a new dress today and even put on makeup. Siki, you look really beautiful when you're dressed up. You should dress up more. You look so good now. You'll charm everyone when you go out. Yi Siki's heart sank. So, unknowingly, she had already become a haggard old woman. Her smile became even more forced. Even Sis Wu could tell that she had specially dressed up today. But old Lin didn't have any reaction. He wasn't like this in the past. Did he not love her anymore? After going upstairs and thinking for a long time, she couldn't help but ask for Xiaodong's opinion. At this moment, Xiaodong was sitting in the car and sending Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao to kindergarten. When she received a call from Yi Siki, she smiled and said, Yezi, what's the matter? Attention, Xinwu 799. Chapter 203. Is it convenient for you to take the call now? I'm in the car. I'm taking the kids to kindergarten. What's up? Yi Siki paused for a moment. Call me when you're free. I'll wait for your call. Oh, okay. Xiaodong had never heard her so depressed before. She had a bad feeling about this. 10 minutes later, Xiaodong took the kids to kindergarten. She found a quiet spot in the school and sat under the shade of a tree to call Yi Siki. Yi Siki sounded depressed. Xia, I suspect that old Lin is having an affair. Xiaodong had actually been worried about this for a long time. When she heard what Yi Siki said, she was not shocked. Instead, she was very calm. Yezi, we all know what kind of person old Lin is. Let's get to the bottom of this first. Maybe it's not what you think. Xia, I found a long strand of hair on his shirt. There was also a lipstick mark on the back of his shirt. Yi Siki began to sob. Also, I followed him to the hospital last night and found out that he was very intimate with by Mei Wei. Xiaodong frowned. Wait, I think something is wrong. Why would there be a lipstick mark on his back? Yi Siki cried even louder. Maybe she hugged him from behind and left it there. Xiaodong's heart ached as she said, Yezi, don't cry. How about this? Let's talk when we meet up. I'll go to your house right away. Xiaodong rushed over to Yi Siki's house without stopping. Yi Siki's eyes were red and swollen. Even though she had put on some light makeup, it could not hide the sadness on her face. Xiaodong's heart ached for her. Without another word, she hugged her tightly. Tell me first, what's going on? Yi Siki told her in detail about Lin Shihao not coming home all night and how she found out about his whereabouts. After hearing this, Xiaodong frowned and asked, Old Lin said he was staying at the hospital director's house. Did you ask the director? No. Do you know the dean's home phone number? Xiaodong decided to get to the bottom of this. Yi Siki flipped through the phone book for a long time and found the director's home phone. Xiaodong gestured for her to call it. It was the headmaster's servant who answered the call. Yi Siki asked a few simple questions and found out what had happened. Lin Shihao did not sleep at the headmaster's house that night, and Bai Mei Wei did not return home that night either. So, Were they really together that night? Yi Siki was on the verge of breaking down. Don't worry. Even if they are together, they might not have done anything wrong to you. Xia Dong hugged her and said, Yezi, listen to me. Stop guessing and ask old Lin directly. Let him tell you what happened that night. No, I don't dare. If they really, then what should I do? Tears welled up in her eyes as she grabbed Xia Dong's hand tightly. Xia, tell me. What should I do if he really cheated on me? Xia Dong's eyes were filled with tears as she clutched at Xia Dong's hand tightly. Yezi, calm down first. Look into my eyes. Xia Dong held onto her shoulders and said, Tell me, do you still love Lin Shihao? Do you love him? She sobbed and said, How could I not love him? I've loved him for 8 years. If he really cheated on you, are you willing to forgive him? Will you still be able to live with him? Xia Dong was asking Yi Siki this question, but she was also asking herself. I don't know. I need to think about it. Yi Siki and Lin Shihao were each other's first loves. They had never had any messy exes to ruin their relationship. They had been very happy all this time and had never met with any setbacks. She really didn't know if she could tolerate his betrayal. Yezi, let's not cry anymore. Let's go out for a walk and relax, okay? Yi Siki wiped the tears from her face and said, Okay, let's go out for a walk. If I stay at home, my thoughts will only run wild. The weather was good today. There was no scorching sun and a cool breeze blew. It was very comfortable walking on the streets. They drank coffee, went shopping, watched movies and went to many places. Although Yi Siki was smiling, Xia Dong could tell that her smile was forced. Xia Dong suggested, Siki, do you want me to go for a drink with you? No need. You're pregnant. Don't go to noisy places like bars. Besides, it's about time. You should go and pick up the children. I'm going to pick up Nyonyo too. Xia Dong smiled and said, Okay then. I'll send you to Nyonyo's school first. Yi Siki didn't stand on ceremony and agreed with a smile. Xia Dong sent her to the entrance of Nyonyo's primary school. She didn't say anything else as she was afraid of bringing up sad memories. She hugged her and said goodbye. She drove the car to the kindergarten and then picked up the children to go home. The living room was very lively. The whole family was there. Even Bailey Xiong and Bailey Han came back early from the company. They seemed to be discussing something. Xiao Bao ran in quickly and greeted the elders politely. He sat down next to his sister. Xiao Guai grinned as she took out her handkerchief and wiped the sweat off his face. Xiao Yi walked in with Xia Dong and greeted the elders as well. He glanced at the seat next to Xiao Guai. Daddy was sitting on one side and Xiao Bao was sitting on the other. His pink cheeks puffed up. No wonder Xiao Bao ran so fast. He was trying to snatch the seat. He snorted and walked straight to Bailey Han's side. He lifted his little face and grinned, revealing his adorable little white teeth. Daddy, can you sit over there? You can sit with Mommy. He pointed to the empty sofa opposite him. Bailey Han smirked and patted his head. All right, I'll give this position to you. Thank you, Daddy. As soon as Bailey Han stood up, he sat down as if he was worried that someone would snatch the seat away from him. Brother E, it's embarrassing to snatch a seat from Daddy. Xiao Guai giggled and gestured with her soft little fingers on her face, making a bashful gesture. Xiao Yi's handsome little face blushed. He turned his head uncomfortably. I'm not snatching a seat. I'm creating an opportunity for Daddy and Mommy to be together. Xiao Bao came over and smiled mischievously. Gigai, don't believe him. He's lying. Xiao Yi glared fiercely at Xiao Bao. He put his face in front of Xiao Guai and whined, Gigai, I have sweat on my face too. Oh okay. Brother E, I'll help you wipe it off. Xiao Guai took out her handkerchief and wiped his sweat earnestly. The family couldn't help but laugh. After all this time, Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi were fighting over Xiao Guai. Ever since the family had 3 Xiao Bao, there was a lot more laughter in the house. The old madam's eyes were smiling. She looked away from the children and focused on Xia Dong. Xia Dong, our family is gathered here today to discuss your wedding with Ahan. Ahan wants to set the wedding for next week. What do you think? Xia Dong looked at Bailey Han in surprise. Seeing his smile, she was touched, but She looked at the old madam worriedly. Grandma, is it really appropriate to rush the wedding? The old madam knew what Xiaodong was worried about. She had tried to persuade Bailey Han to postpone the wedding, but he disagreed and insisted on holding it as soon as possible. The old madam smiled. Our whole family has agreed. It's up to you now. Xiaodong was very worried. She was afraid that a sudden wedding would upset Bailey Han. Bailey Han suddenly grabbed her hand and stared at her with his dark eyes. Xia, what are you worried about? No, I'm not. Then why don't you agree to hold the wedding? He tightened his grip on her hand. Mika Kito was back. He felt a sense of crisis. He had to announce to the world that Xiaodong was his wife as soon as possible. It's not that I don't agree. She didn't know how to say it. You're just starting to hesitate. Do you regret marrying me? His voice turned cold. She quickly said, I don't. I've never regretted marrying you. Ahun, don't be agitated. Then let's hold the wedding. He held her shoulders and announced domineeringly. Okay. She had no way to disobey him. The whole family happily decided which church to hold the wedding in, which hotel to hold the banquet in, and even where to go for the honeymoon. They all started a heated discussion. The three little guys were not willing to be left out. They ran over and looked at the pictures of the scenery on the computer screen. From time to time, they interrupted and expressed their opinions in a childish voice. Everyone looked very happy. Xiaodong felt that it was unreal. When did Bailey's family acknowledge and accept her? Sister-in-law, don't just stand there. You're the female lead of the wedding. You must express your opinion. Bailey called out to her with a smile. Sister-in-law? Xiaodong looked at Bailey Jing in astonishment. She smiled happily and winked mischievously. Ever since Xiao Yi hacked into the church's surveillance camera last night and found out that Su Xingchen wasn't injured by Xiaodong, she accepted Xiaodong in her heart. She even persuaded Bai Jinxiu to accept Xiaodong. Sister-in-law? Come and take a look. Oh, okay. Xiaodong still felt a little confused. These pictures were all created by Bailey Jing. She specially searched for the world's famous scenic spots on the internet and created a PowerPoint presentation. Beautiful pictures of the scenery slid past her eyes. Xiaodong gradually integrated into their atmosphere. She listened to their discussion and occasionally gave a few opinions. In the end, everyone voted and decided on the church and hotel. Since Xiaodong was pregnant and it wasn't suitable for her to run around, they decided to have their honeymoon in Greece. Bailey Han came out of the shower and found Xiaodong hugging her knees and sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. He dried his hair and walked to her side. He sat down and said softly, Honey, what are you thinking about? She turned back and smiled. Nothing. I'm in a daze. You've been in a daze enough times today. He hugged her waist and laughed lightly. Who asked you to suddenly attack me? It would be strange if I wasn't surprised. She leaned comfortably in his arms and naturally wrapped her arms around his waist. She seemed to like being close to him more and more. Welfare, Xinwu 799. Chapter 204. Bailey Han gently stroked her long hair. You look a little unhappy. Is there something on your mind? Xiaodong's body stiffened. She chuckled and said, I was too happy. I didn't expect you to hold a wedding. Silly. Bailey Han kissed her cheek and said gently, I want to marry you before the child is born. I want the baby to know that I'm his daddy. I also want to announce to the world that you're my wife so that they won't dare to have any ideas about you. Xiaodong hugged him tightly. She had to admit that at this moment, she was touched by his words. Bailey Han's hands tightened around her. He lowered his head and kissed her neck. Gradually, he moved up to her ear and whispered hoarsely, Wife, I want you. He sucked on her earlobe and gently licked it. Xiaodong's face heated up and her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Her voice trembled uncontrollably. I am pregnant. I know. He kissed her gently. His hot hand reached into her waist. We can sleep together when you're 3 months pregnant. Also, I'll be very careful. He lifted her head. Her blushing face turned even redder under his scorching gaze. He kissed her lips and whispered stubbornly, Wife, I want you. From the time they registered their marriage until now, even if they slept on the same bed, nothing had happened. Every night, he hugged her soft and fragrant body to sleep. One could imagine the torture he had endured. He had endured for a long time. She had no reason to reject him. She shyly lowered her eyes and put her hands around his neck. She used her actions to express her intentions. The corners of Bailey Han's lips curled up. He carried her from the ground to the bed and kissed her lips with his slightly cold lips. The kiss was soft and gentle, imprisoning her in his arms. She didn't know when, but his hands had already taken off her pajamas. Her half-naked shoulders were smooth and white, and they shone charmingly under the light. She leaned against his broad chest, her hands unconsciously grabbing onto his robe. His voice was low and husky with a bewitching sexiness. "Wife, help me take off my clothes." She reached out with trembling fingers and tugged at the belt of his bathrobe. With a gentle tug, his firm chest entered her line of sight. His figure was very good. His muscles were well defined and there wasn't a single piece of fat. His hands kneaded her softness, and his lips and tongue wandered over her neck, earlobe, and collarbone. His movements were gentle, and a flame gradually ignited in her body. Her hands could not help but hook around his neck. The gentler his movements were, the more vigorous the flame in her body burned. A sense of emptiness and eagerness wrapped around her. Xiaodong wanted to cry. Could she run away now? The answer was obviously no. Xiaodong overcame the shame in her heart. Her movements were extremely slow. Bit by bit, it was a form of torture. He gritted his teeth and endured it, going along with her rhythm. Half an hour later. "Hubby, I can't take it anymore." "Not yet. Wait a little longer." Another half an hour later. Huff, huff. She was so tired that she had fallen asleep. Bailey Han's face darkened. The little woman in his arms had actually fallen asleep. It turned out that he was very capable and annoying. He felt so defeated. In the dream, someone's arm unconsciously hit him, and with a paw sound, it landed on his bare chest. His eyes gradually overflowed with a smile, and he tightly held her in his arms. This cute little woman was his wife, the person he would protect for the rest of his life. Lin Shihao returned late again. He had just finished a 3-hour operation. When he opened the door, he looked exhausted. He saw Yi Siki curled up on the sofa with her head down and hugging her knees. She looked so small and lonely. He quickly walked over and sat beside her. He put his arm around her shoulders and asked, "Honey, what's wrong?" Yi Siki looked up. Her eyes were a little red. She squeezed out an ugly smile and said, "Hubby, you're back." "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Lin Shihao touched her forehead. "I'm fine." She pulled his hand down and said in a low voice, "Hubby, I want to ask you a question." After parting ways with Xiaodong in the evening, she thought about a lot of things on the way back. In the end, she decided to ask him clearly. She didn't want to be confused, worried, and in pain anymore. He held her hand tightly. He was a little nervous, but there was a gentle smile on his face. "What do you want to ask?" Her eyes were unfocused as she stared at a spot on the coffee table. She asked calmly, "Did something happen that night when you attended the seminar with Bai Mei Wei?" His heart skipped a beat. His smile froze. After a while he asked, "Honey, what do you mean by that?" Her expression was still calm. "I asked Bai Mei Wei about it. She said that you didn't stay overnight at Bai Mei Wei's house that night, and Bai Mei Wei didn't go back either. If something really happened, I want to know the truth." His throat felt as though it was stuffed with cotton. He couldn't say a word. Her voice was so calm as she recounted slowly, "I found a long strand of hair on your clothes. I also found a lipstick mark on your shirt. Don't you want to explain?" "Honey, listen to me." Lin Shihao, who didn't change his expression in the face of death, suddenly panicked. His hands held Yi Siki's shoulders tightly as he said agitatedly and guiltily, "Honey, I was drunk that night. I mistook Bai Mei Wei for you. Honey, please forgive me. I really didn't do it on purpose." Her heart seemed to have stopped beating. At that moment, she couldn't even feel any pain. She was like a puppet being shaken by his hands. Her gaze was unfocused as she stared at his face in a daze. However, she couldn't see the expression on his face clearly. "Honey, what happened to you? Don't scare me." She instantly lost her life under his hands. He shook her shoulders in fear. Honey, come back to your senses. Don't scare me. Her gaze finally focused and regained a trace of clarity. She grinned and revealed a bleak smile. Honey, what do you want to do? Do you want to be responsible for her? No, Siki. I told Mei Wei that it was just a misunderstanding. Let's pretend that nothing happened. Lin Shihao hugged her tightly, his fingers trembling. She had really scared him just now. Nothing had happened. It was easy to say, but all the damage had been done. Even if he was drunk, even if he didn't do it on purpose, his adultery had left a very deep wound in her heart. It was possible that she wouldn't be able to fill it in this lifetime. Honey, let's start over, okay? He held her face, his eyes uneasy and his tone full of pleading. This wasn't the Lin Shihao she knew. The Lin Shihao she knew was proud and complacent. Her already scarred heart couldn't help but ache for him. Honey, let's start over for Nyo Nyo, okay? He held her hand very tightly, as if he was afraid that she would suddenly pull away and leave. Her heart ached even more. She reached out her left hand and caressed his handsome face. After a long while she spat out a word. Okay. Honey, I promise that this will never happen again. I will go home early and love you well. He suddenly pulled her into his arms. His voice was low and hoarse, and broken tears fell from his eyes. She leaned on his chest, tears rolling down her face. Although she had decided to forgive him and start over, Yi Siki still had a knot in her heart. When they were sleeping at night, Lin Shihao wanted to hug her in his arms, just like he had done for the past 7 years. However, she subconsciously reached out her hand to block him. By the time she reacted, a hurt expression had already appeared in his eyes. She smiled stiffly and took the initiative to lean against him. She reached out her hands and hugged his waist, leaning into his embrace. She tried to cover up her subconscious feelings of resistance, but unfortunately, her stiff posture and body told her everything. Lin Shihao's heart ached and he felt guilty. He could only hug her tightly and try to heal all the scars with time. Powerful novel, Xinwu 799. Chapter 205. As soon as the news of Bailey's eldest son's grand wedding was released, the media was in an uproar again. But this time, they were not targeting Bailey Han and Xia Dong. Instead, they were focusing on Su Yunqian and Mika Kito. The two of them were considered abandoned, so the media was more concerned about their attitude towards the wedding. Su Yunqian was still dreaming of making Bailey Han change his mind. She did not expect that after 3 days, Bailey Han and Xia Dong would be holding a wedding. She was so angry that she could not care less about her image in front of the servants. She smashed everything in the room that she could. But once she was in a public place, she returned to her indifferent and elegant appearance. She was high above the masses and above the common populace, as if she had never been abandoned. As for Mika Kito, he was very secretive. It was impossible for the media to take photos of him. However, the employees of Bo Ao Group were unlucky. They acted like they were walking on thin ice. They did not even dare to breathe loudly in front of the evil god Mika Kito. Lu Xing and Jiang Dao were the first to bear the brunt of Mika Kito's cold face. The only thing they could do was to not mention anything about Xia Dong in front of him. Once, there was an insensible little brother who said, "This summer is really hot." As a result, Bei Tangshen sent a sharp glare over and that little brother was immediately carried out by 2 of his subordinates. That painful wail caused everyone to tremble with fear. "Boss, someone is causing trouble at the East District skyscraper. They killed 2 of our underlings." Jiang Dao had something to report. He bent over and tried his best to avoid Bei Tangshen's gaze. Mika Kito's voice was cold. "Do you still need to report this to me?" Jiang Dao was sweating profusely. "We caught the troublemaker. He is an assassin. Suzaku said she saw him at the godfather's place." Mika Kito's eyes narrowed. "What did the assassin say?" "The assassin was killed before he could say anything. I suspect that it has something to do with Godfather." Mika Kito tapped her slender fingers on the table. "Why is Godfather targeting us?" "It might be because of the matter between Suzaku and White Tiger. Didn't Suzaku and White Tiger sell him out?" Mika Kito waved her hand. "Don't jump to conclusions. Investigate the killer's background carefully. Also, investigate the Godfather's background." "Boss, The negotiation with Hung Long Group is scheduled to be held at Skyscraper. Should we change the location? No need. Tell Gu Qian to be prepared. I don't want any more accidents to happen. Understood. Night fell. As the red light district, the streets of the East District were brightly lit and bustling. High-end luxury cars were constantly coming and going. The women in the cars were undoubtedly beautiful. 2 limited edition Maybachs slowly drove in, attracting the attention of many people on the street. The Maybach stopped at the entrance of the most luxurious entertainment club, Skyscraper. There were 2 rows of staff standing at the entrance of Skyscraper, ready to welcome the guests. The people in the first car got out first. 4 men in black suits stood beside the second car. Jiang Dao got out of the passenger seat of the second car and walked to the back seat with steady steps. He opened the door gracefully. Boss. Mika Kito stepped out of the car. His black suit accentuated his tall figure. His nose bridge was high, his thin lips were slightly pursed, and his sharp black eyes carried a dangerous message. The sound of footsteps could be heard as he walked toward the door. The staff on both sides immediately felt a strong oppressive aura. They all held their breaths and did not dare to breathe loudly. A graceful beauty in a cheongsam greeted him. She was the boss of Skyscraper, Gu Qian. She smiled heartily and said, "Boss, please come in." Mika Kito was expressionless. He replied indifferently, "Mm." Jiang Dao stepped forward slightly and whispered a few words in Gu Qian's ear. Gu Qian raised her delicate eyebrows slightly and then nodded. The 4 men in black behind Jiang Dao immediately rushed into Skyscraper. About 5 minutes later, the man in the lead came in front of Jiang Dao. He bowed respectfully and said in Japanese, "Hallmaster, there are no suspicious people or surveillance devices inside." Jiang Dao nodded slightly and turned his gaze to Mika Kito, waiting for his instructions. "Boss." Mika Kito did not say anything and walked straight in. As Mika Kito was decisive and ruthless, he had made many enemies in a city. Even though he was in his own territory, he had to be careful. Skyscraper was Yamaguchi Gumi's property. Outsiders did not know this. Mika Kito arranged for important negotiations to be held here because of this reason. Gu Qian followed beside him and said with a smile, "Boss, Shangguanbo is already in your VIP reception room." Mika Kito replied indifferently, "Mm." Shangguanbo was the CEO of Hung Long Group. He was 50 years old this year. Due to the financial crisis, his company was now in a state of loss. 2 days ago, he took the initiative to contact Mika Kito to discuss the acquisition of his company. "Brother Beitang, I've been waiting for a long time." Shangguanbo saw Mika Kito coming in. He stood up with a smile and stretched out his hands to greet him. "Sorry to keep you waiting." Mika Kito shook his hand politely. Shangguanbo smiled and said, "I've already prepared the contract. Brother Beitang, take a look and see if there are any problems. If there are no problems, we can sign the contract today." Mika Kito raised his hand and said indifferently, "Let's not talk about the contract in a hurry. I think the issue of the price still needs to be discussed." Shangguanbo was stunned. "Didn't we already set a purchase price of 1 billion? Mika Kito's gaze fell on him. His deep black eyes were like a black hole, as if they were going to suck everything in. His tone was calm, but there was a sense of authority that did not allow anyone to object. "The agreed price of 1 billion is only for enterprises that can operate normally. Yesterday, I sent someone to your company to ask around and found out that 2 of your factories are only empty shells. 2 of your stores have already been sold to outsiders. You didn't mention these things in detail when you were negotiating." Shangguanbo smiled awkwardly. "It's my fault for being careless." Mika Kito leaned back and said indifferently, "Given the current situation of your company, I can only invest 500 million. 500 million is too low. I can't agree." Shangguanbo gritted his teeth. 700 million. I can only invest 500 million. Any more than that would be a waste. Mika Kito had already found out that there was a serious problem with Hung Long Group's capital chain. Otherwise, he would not have been so desperate and wanted to sell the ownership of the entire group. The 2 of them refused to give in to each other. Shangguanbo's expression turned ugly when the negotiation failed. He gritted his teeth and said, "I have to go back and discuss this with the board of directors." 3 days. I'll only wait for 3 days. Mikakito stood up and put his hands leisurely in his trouser pockets. His expression was as indifferent as ever. Goodbye. Shangguanbo left the lounge first and got into his Audi. Less than 5 minutes after he left, Mikakito also walked out of the lounge. Just as he walked towards the car door, something dangerous happened. More than a dozen assassins dressed in black and wearing masks suddenly appeared on the street. They all had 2 pistols in their hands and were shooting at Mikakito. Boss, be careful. There were only 2 cars left in front of them. Everyone hid behind the cars. Screams filled the street. All kinds of men and women scattered in fear. Soon, only Mikakito's men and the crazy assassins were left. Zhang Dao quickly took out his pistol and shot at the assassins. Boss, we'll cover you. You take the opportunity to retreat into the lounge. Mikakito's hawk-like eyes scanned the surroundings and said coldly, It's too late. Get in the car. The assassins had already surrounded them from behind. Their only escape route was the car. The bodyguard behind Mikakito had already been shot. He urged Mikakito and the rest to leave quickly in Japanese. He clutched his chest and managed to hit 2 assassins. Then he fell to the ground and died on the spot. Mikakito glanced at his loyal men and ordered the rest to retreat. He quickly jumped into the car. The bulletproof glass temporarily blocked the bullets and the car sped off. The assassins also got into the car and chased after them. Soon, Bei Tangshin's 2 cars arrived at a deserted street. The atmosphere here was a little strange, and it was abnormally quiet. Mikakito's heart skipped a beat and realized something was wrong. He turned the steering wheel and wanted to drive the car in another direction. Suddenly, a familiar Audi sped from that direction. He had no time to think and rushed towards the Audi. The moment he brushed past the car, the Audi suddenly swerved and blocked the middle of the road. Bei Tangshin slammed on the brakes, but he still hit the car. The huge impact made the people in the car suddenly fall forward. Fortunately, there were no casualties. Zhang Dao rolled up the car window and shouted at the Audi. The car in front, get out of the way. Bei Tangshin saw the driver of the Audi raise his hand and pressed Zhang Dao down. The 2 of them lowered their heads together. Bang! A gunshot was heard. The bulletproof glass was almost shot through. The bullet was only 0.1 millimeters away from entering the car. Zhang Dao's heart skipped a beat. Boss, that looks like Shangguanbo's car. Mikakito said coldly, That's right. We have fallen into a trap. Quickly inform our brothers at the headquarters to come to our rescue. The car behind them would catch up in 2 minutes. They had to leave this place quickly. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from the empty street, followed by intense gunfire. The Maybach's tires were shot and could no longer start. Mikakito and the rest had to sneak out of the car from another direction. They retreated into the alley while defending themselves. From the gunfire, there were at least 15 people on the other side. On their side, there were only 5 survivors. There was a huge disparity in strength between the 2 sides. It was only a matter of time before they could not defend themselves. Suzaku did not expect to receive Zhang Dao's distress signal at this time. Moreover, the location of the incident was very close to where she was now. Attention, Shinwu 799. Chapter 206. Suzaku knew that Mikakito was going to have a business meeting tonight, but she did not know the exact location. He would not let her know about such confidential information for the time being. She did not have a mission tonight, so she came out to relax. She went to the bar to have a few drinks, but as soon as she walked out of the bar, she received Zhang Dao's distress signal. It was 5 kilometers away from her current location. Should she go or not? Anyway, that person was so strong. If she did not go, he would not die. She'd better go home and have a beauty sleep. Suzaku got into her car and drove in the opposite direction. However, after driving for a few hundred meters, she received another distress signal. It seemed that things were getting serious. Otherwise, Zhang Dao would not have sent the signal twice. Her cold face was expressionless. Suddenly she frowned, turned the car around and sped towards the location of the accident. Under the dim street lights, a red sports car sped towards her. When Suzaku arrived at the scene, it was a mess. Several cars were abandoned. Mikakito's Maybach had collided with an Audi. The front of the car was dented, and there were several bloody bodies on the ground. There were no traces of living people. She frowned and looked sharply at the alley next to her. She could hear gunshots from time to time. It seemed that Mika Kito and the rest were trapped inside. She did not chase them directly. Instead, she found an entrance from another direction. She held the gun in her right hand and walked in cautiously. It was dark here, and there was a strong stench from the garbage. She frowned in disgust but did not stop. Suddenly, she kicked something and a hand grabbed her ankle. She glanced at the person at her feet coldly and aimed her gun at him. Cough, cough. It's me. The man lying on the ground lowered his voice and gasped for breath. Suzaku, the boss is in front. Go and help him. It was Zhang Dao. It sounded like he was seriously injured. Suzaku put away her gun and dragged him behind the garbage. Stay here and don't move. Suzaku walked in the alley step by step under the faint starlight. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. She quickly squatted down and hid behind a pile of garbage. Two people's voices came from the direction she came from. As the alley was very quiet, their voices were particularly clear. Did you find him? Not yet. Continue. Damn it. Zhang Dao was only 10 meters away from where they were talking. If they went a little further, they would find him. Vermilion Bird frowned and raised her pistol, intending to get rid of the two first. She placed her finger on the trigger and aimed at the target. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, a hand suddenly covered her mouth. The thick smell of blood and the unique scent of a man rushed into her nose. A low and weak voice sounded in her ear. Don't act rashly. Seeing that it was Bei Tang Xin, she was pleasantly surprised. The sound of a gunshot would definitely attract other killers. But if she didn't shoot, Zhang Dao would be discovered. A hand slid towards her calf. His palm was sticky and might be bloodstains. Suzaku didn't know what he wanted to do. She frowned and was about to make a move. Unexpectedly, his hand pulled out the dagger she had hidden in her leather boot. He put the dagger in her hand and replaced the gun. He lowered his voice and said, "You're in charge of the one on the left." She nodded slightly. He took his hand away from her mouth. The two of them walked side by side and got closer to Zhang Dao. Suzaku held the dagger tightly. Her eyes flashed and the dagger was already stabbing towards the heart of the person on the left. At the same time, another dagger brushed past her right. With a whistling sound, it pierced towards the heart of the person on the right. With two loud bangs, the two men fell to the ground without even making a sound. There are 5 people left. Mika Kito was almost whispering into her ear. When he breathed, his warm breath brushed past her earlobe. She felt a little uncomfortable. She lowered her voice. What about us? The 3 of us. His words were concise and to the point. Suzaku understood what he meant. The only people left alive were Zhang Dao and herself. His clothes were soaked in liquid, and through his clothes, it seeped onto her body. The strong smell of blood assailed her nose. She frowned. You're injured. Can you walk? Yes. He breathed heavily. Take the back. Take Zhang Dao. Zhang Dao's injuries were worse than Mika Kito's. When they reached him, he was already unconscious. Blood kept flowing out of his chest. Suzaku didn't say a word. She bent down and carried Zhang Dao on her back. She said in a low voice, "My car is parked at the entrance in front. Can you hold on?" Mika Kito grunted in a nasal voice. He followed behind her with heavy steps. Blood flowed down his fingers and dripped onto the ground. As they walked, the blood flowed along the road. When they arrived at the parking lot, someone ran out of the alley. Vermilion Bird supported Zhang Dao with one hand and raised the gun with the other to aim. With a bang, the man was killed. Quick, they're in front. Suddenly, there was a scream. Another battle was about to begin. Suzaku threw Zhang Dao into the back seat. She hid behind Maybach and shot at the enemy. She said calmly, "Mika Kito, you go first." Mika Kito's gun had run out of bullets. He took the gun out of Zhang Dao's arms and said coldly, "I'll never leave a woman behind and run for my life." At this moment, 2 cars sped towards them. As they drove, the people inside fired at the killers. Their men had arrived. Their firepower was reversed, and they quickly eliminated the remaining 4 assassins. One of Mika Kito's men rushed over and supported him. Boss, are you okay? I'm fine. Beitang Shen clutched his chest as fresh blood gushed out once again. He whispered a few words to his subordinates before his breathing became heavy as if he was about to suffocate. Stop talking. Call the doctor. Suzaku jumped into the car and started the engine. Mika Kito sat in the back seat and soon lost consciousness. They rushed back to Mika Kito's villa. The doctor had already received the news and was ready for the operation. Several of his men carried the unconscious Mika Kito and Jiang Dao into the operating room. 2 doctors operated on them at the same time. 2 hours later, the operation was over. The doctor said that the operation was a success. Mika Kito and Jiang Dao were out of danger. Jiang Dao was shot 3 times. One of the bullets pierced his lung by 1 centimeter. Mika Kito was shot twice. His chest and back were injured. Fortunately, his vital organs were not injured. After the operation, Suzaku did not need to stay. She greeted him coldly and was about to leave when one of his men ran over and said, Suzaku, boss is awake. He has something to tell you. Suzaku raised her eyebrows. This man was really strong. He woke up so quickly even though he was severely injured. Mika Kito was lying on the bed. His face was pale, but it did not affect his handsomeness. His eyes were as sharp and gloomy as usual. He had a high nose bridge and was as handsome as a god. When he saw her enter, his thin lips moved and his voice was hoarse. Thank you for today. Suzaku did not expect him to thank her. She was stunned. She smiled and said calmly, You're too polite. It's only right that I work for you. There was no emotion in his deep eyes. I asked someone to take down the faces of those killers. Take a look and see if you know them. Okay. Have a good rest. Suzaku really admired him. Even though he was injured, he was still so meticulous. He had arranged everything so neatly. Lu Xing brought the vermilion bird to a room and took out a stack of photos for her. She explained, These are the photos that the boss ordered his men to take. These are the appearances of the assassins. He deliberately pulled out a photo from the stack of photos and placed it in front of Vermilion Bird. This man disguised himself as Shangguan Bo tonight and set up this trap, he said. It turned out that the Shangguan Bo who negotiated with Mika Kito was not the real Shangguan Bo, but an assassin in disguise. They ambushed Mika Kito on the street and forced Mika Kito to drive away. Then, the fake Shangguan Bo intercepted them. If Suzaku had not arrived in time, it was hard to predict what would have happened. The person in the photo was already dead. His eyes were closed and the blood on his face had probably been wiped clean by the man who took the photo. Suzaku carefully identified it for a while and said, I've seen this person before at Godfather's bar. She picked up the rest of the photos and carefully identified them one by one. These people were all unfamiliar and she did not recognize any of them. She thought for a while and said, White Tiger has more connections than me. Lu Xing, I suggest you send these photos to Japan and let White Tiger recognize them. Lu Xing nodded expressionlessly and immediately got someone to fax all the photos to Japan for White Tiger to recognize. Suzaku stretched and wanted to leave. Lu Xing stretched out his right arm and stopped her. He said indifferently, Suzaku, you'll stay here tonight. She was surprised. Why? Boss instructed me. Lu Xing thought for a while and said seriously, It's so late. Maybe boss is worried that it's not safe for you to go home. Suzaku's facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. Lu Xing, don't guess what boss means. Do you think I'm the kind of woman who's not safe? If anyone dared to do anything to her, it would be strange if she did not skin them alive. Lu Xing looked her up and down. She was wearing a black leather skirt and a pair of black leather boots. She was sexy and charming. If she walked out, she would definitely attract bees and butterflies. He said indifferently, It's not safe. Suzaku rolled her eyes. The men in Yamaguchi-gumi were all chauvinistic. Even though they were all assassins, they still showed their distrust of a woman's strength from time to time. Did they really think that she was the kind of delicate miss who could not even truss a chicken? She patted his shoulder. I appreciate boss's good intentions. It's still more comfortable to sleep in my own bed. I'll go back first. You should rest early too. Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 207. Mika Kito's physical fitness was very good, and his willpower was strong. The next day, he insisted on getting out of bed. Zhang Dao was a little unluckier than him. Because his injuries were more serious than his, he had to lie in bed for a few days to recuperate. In this assassination attempt, the Sanku group had sacrificed 5 of their subordinates. This could be said to have angered Bai Tangshen. His entire body was emitting a ruthless aura as he issued a death order to find out who the mastermind was. A second ago, Bai Tangshen's entire body was still emitting cold air. In the next moment, he received a phone call, and the corners of his lips immediately hooked up into a warm smile. Lu Xing, Vermilion Bird, and the others very tactfully retreated quietly. It was definitely a call from one of the 2 little fellows. They guessed right. The call was from Xiao Guai. Her soft and tender voice reached Mika Kito's ear. Uncle Shin, when are you coming back? I miss you so much. Mika Kito looked at the wounds on his body and smiled bitterly. Gigai, Uncle Shin will be back in a few days. Xiao Guai's disappointed voice dragged out. Then, Uncle Shin, we've already moved. Will you still come to see me? Yes, Uncle Shen will definitely come to see you. Uncle Shen, Mommy and Daddy are getting married. They're going to Greece for their honeymoon. I want to go with Uncle Shin. Mika Kito clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were deep and cold. He didn't want to know anything related to her. However, in the face of the naive Xiao Guai, he couldn't lose his temper. He tried his best to say in a gentle tone, Okay, when Gigai grows up, Uncle Shin will take you wherever you want to go. Really? Xiao Guai smiled happily. Then let's pinky swear. Uncle Shin, you're not allowed to be a scalper. Okay, let's pinky swear. Ah, Uncle Shin, someone's knocking on the door. I have to hang up. Bye. Xiao Guai hurriedly hung up the phone. She thought it was one of the servants, but she didn't expect it to be Xiao Bao. Xiao Guai patted her chest and stuck out her tongue cutely. Brother, you scared me to death. Gigai, did you do something bad? Otherwise, why would you be afraid? Xiao Bao snickered and sat beside Xiao Guai. I didn't. Xiao Guai pouted, her big eyes blinking. I missed Uncle Shen, so I called him secretly. Xiao Bao blinked. I guessed it a long time ago. You're still holding the phone in your arms. You must have just hung up. What did Uncle Shen say? Xiao Guai said honestly. Uncle Shen said that he would only be back in a few days. Xiao Bao blinked. He had already known from the newspaper that Uncle Shen had returned to China. Only the silly girl was still in the dark. Forget it. It was better not to tell her the truth, lest she be sad. There was news from Japan. After White Tiger identified the photo, he confirmed that the man who had disguised himself as Shangguan Bo was a killer who had a good relationship with his godfather. His nickname was Scorpion. As for the other dozen or so people, the White Tiger recognized 2 of them. They had both made deals with his godfather before. Suzuka's eyes darkened. It seems that this case was handled by his godfather. The employer paid a high price to arrange so many killers to complete the task at once. Mika Kito glanced at her coldly with displeasure. He was about to be hacked to death, but she cared about how much the employer paid. Suzaku naturally felt the murderous aura from him. She smiled and said lightly, Boss, how many people know that you had a business deal with Shangguan Bo in Earthly Paradise? Mika Kito also thought of this. From his point of view, only Zhang Dao, as his assistant, knew who he was doing business with and where. He would never betray him. Then if the news was leaked, the problem must be with Shangguan Bo. Suzaku, contact Shangguan Bo. I want to meet him as soon as possible. Now that Zhang Dao was injured and recuperating, Suzaku had temporarily replaced Zhang Dao and was promoted to his assistant. Suzaku glanced at the injuries on his body and said lightly, The doctor asked you to rest quietly. He frowned. I know my own body. I don't need to rest quietly. Okay then, I said too much. She shrugged with an indifferent expression. Suzaku went out and dialed the number of Shangguan Bo's secretary. When she heard that Mika Kito wanted to meet their president, the secretary apologized profusely and said that their president did not come to the office this morning. Then she gave Suzaku a cell phone number and said that it was Shangguan Bo's private number. Suzaku then called Shangguan Bo's cell phone. The phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. Finally, the call was transferred to the landline of Shangguanbou's main residence. The servant said that their master had not come home since yesterday and that their wife had called the police. Suzaku frowned and reported Shangguanbou's situation to Mika Kito. Something must have happened to Shangguanbou. Mika Kito's slender fingers tapped on the table and analyzed calmly. The Audi that the killer drove here is Shangguanbou's car. It's very likely that he kidnapped Shangguanbou. It said that the police haven't found Shangguanbou's whereabouts yet. I'm guessing that he has been killed. Mika Kito said in a low voice. The other party thinks that we won't be able to find any clues once Shangguanbou is dead. Then they underestimate me. Mika Kito. Suzaku, send someone to investigate the people who have been in contact with Shangguanbou these 2 days. Understood. In the afternoon, news came from the police station that Shangguanbou's body had been fished out of the river. There were strangulation marks on his neck, and he had died of suffocation. The time of death was estimated to be between 7 and 9 o'clock last night. This was the time when Shangguanbou drove to earthly paradise. It seemed that the killer had already known the time and place of the negotiation between Shangguanbou and Mika Kito, and had killed Shangguanbou on his way to the negotiation. After dumping his body, the killer had disguised himself as Shangguanbou and lured Mika Kito into a trap. Suzaku took advantage of her advantage as a woman and pretended to be a policewoman. She went to Shangguanbou's house to investigate the situation and try to find out information related to the killer. Suzaku pushed the flat glasses on the bridge of her nose and said seriously, Mrs. Shangguan, please carefully recall who Mr. Shangguan had a feud with when he was alive. Mrs. Shangguan covered her mouth and sobbed. My husband had offended many people in the business world when he was alive, but those people didn't have to kill my husband over such a trivial matter, did they? Mrs. Shangguan, we can't let go of any clues. Please cooperate with us to find the real killer as soon as possible and comfort Mr. Shangguan's soul in heaven. Mrs. Shangguan stopped sobbing and carefully recalled more than a dozen names, all of which were people who had disputes with Shangguanbou. Suzaku asked, Mrs. Shangguan, did Mr. Shangguan do anything special in the past few days? Mrs. Shangguan thought carefully and said, My husband has been in a bad mood for the past 2 months because of the company's asset crisis. About 3 or 4 days ago, he suddenly came home in high spirits, saying that he had found a way to solve the company's crisis. Zhu Kei secretly speculated in her heart. 3 or 4 days ago, Shangguanbou took the initiative to contact Beiteng Shen and proposed to sell Hanglong Group. Did he say what the solution was? Mrs. Shangguan shook her head. He rarely tells me about the company, but that night, I heard him talking to someone on the phone in the study. It seemed that he wanted to cooperate with the Bo AO Group, but I didn't hear the details clearly. Suzaku asked a few more questions and then got a copy of Shangguanbou's call records from the phone company. After careful comparison, Mrs. Shangguan pointed out a time point. Suzaku checked the phone number of the call with Shangguanbou at that time, and finally found that the owner of this phone number was Shangguan AO. Shangguan AO is Shangguanbou's younger brother. He's also the second young master of the Shangguan family who isn't well liked. It's said that he was the son of Master Shangguan and a bar girl. After he turned 18, he ran away from home and never contacted the Shangguan family again. Suzaku reported the information to Mika Kito. The night before Shangguanbou decided to sell Hanglong Group, he talked to Shangguan AO on the phone in the study. I suspect that Shangguan AO suggested him to do so. According to Mrs. Shangguan, Shangguanbou had been worried about it for a month or 2. How could it be so coincidental that after Shangguanbou came up with a solution, he called Shangguan AO, whom he had not contacted for decades, and the two of them happily discussed the details of the cooperation plan. Suzaku continued, I checked Master Shangguan's will. The will said that all the shares of Hanglong Group will be inherited by Shangguanbou. If something happens to Shangguanbou, then Shangguan AO will inherit it. So, Shangguan AO also has a motive. Mika Kito's deep eyes stared at her without blinking. You suspect that Shangguan AO killed 2 birds with 1 stone. He killed Shangguanbou, took the family property, and led me into a trap. Suzaku nodded calmly. I have this suspicion, but what I don't understand is, when did you have a grudge with Shangguan AO? Why did he want to harm you? Mika Kito leaned back in the chair, exuding a domineering aura. Do you have a photo of Shangguan AO? Unfortunately, I haven't found it yet. It seems that the Shangguan family doesn't just hate him. There isn't even a photo of him in the house. Mika Kito flipped through the information about Shangguan Ao and pondered for a moment. Didn't he graduate from the national high school? If I remember correctly, every batch of graduates would take a group photo. Suzaku's eyes lit up, and her beautiful eyes flashed with a passionate light. This was indeed a good starting point. The National High School's archive room did indeed have the photos of that batch of graduates. Suzaku compared the names on the back of the photo with the small profile picture on the photo, and finally found Shangguan Ao's profile picture. He was a teenager of 17 or 18 years old. He was very handsome, but the expression on his face was unruly. Just by looking at his expression and actions, one could tell that he was a delinquent. I don't know this person. Mika Kito only took one look at the photo of Shangguan Ao when he was young, and she was sure that she had never seen him before, let alone have a grudge with him. Awesome novel, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 208. Suzaku thought for a while and said, "Why don't I post this photo online and ask my friends to identify him? Be careful not to alert the enemy. I'll find some trustworthy people. I'll leave this matter to you. Report to me if there's any progress." Ever since the assassination, Mika Kito's attitude towards her had become kinder. Moreover, she had done a good job in this investigation, so his trust in her had increased. Understood. Suzaku nodded and turned to walk to the door. Mika Kito's voice came from behind. "Suzaku, release the news that I'm seriously injured and still in the emergency room. Are you sure you want to use yourself as bait?" Suzaku raised her eyebrows. She knew that he wanted to release the news to lure out the person who wanted to kill him. Since the other party wanted to kill him, if he was seriously injured and not dead, the other party would most likely attack again. Mika Kito said indifferently, "How can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Not only will I release the news, but I'll also make it seem like I'm in the emergency room in the hospital and relax the security of the hospital." "Are you sure the other party will attack again?" Suzaku crossed her arms. "I'm not sure, but if I want to kill someone, I'll definitely have a backup plan." He was only speculating from his perspective. "Okay, I'll arrange it." Immediately, the news that Mika Kito was seriously injured and hospitalized spread through the streets. However, it was not reported how he was injured or which hospital he was in. Xiaodong also knew that Mika Kito was injured and was very worried. She wanted to see him, but she didn't know which hospital he was in, so she could only call Jiang Dao. Jiang Dao glanced at Mika Kito, who was lying on the hospital bed pretending to be seriously injured. His handsome face was as cold as the Antarctic iceberg. Under the old man's cold gaze, he could only say against his will, "Miss Xia, our boss doesn't want to see you for the time being." Xia Dong bit her lip. I just want to know if he's seriously injured." Jiang Dao glanced at his boss again. Under his boss's gaze he replied, "Boss is seriously injured. He's already unconscious. However, his life is not in danger." Xiaodong's heart skipped a beat, and she said nervously, "Jiang Dao, please tell me which hospital he's staying in. Since he's unconscious now, he definitely won't know that I went to see him. As long as you don't tell him, he won't know. Jiang Dao, just tell me. What should he do? What a headache." Jiang Dao looked at Mika Kito questioningly. Mika Kito had set this trap to lure the people who wanted to harm him. What if Xiaodong also came and got into an accident? He shook his head resolutely. Jiang Dao coughed and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Xia. I can't tell you. I still have something to do, so I'll hang up first." Before Xiaodong could coax him again, Jiang Dao hung up the phone impatiently. Xiaodong then called Lu Xing and Suzaku. She wanted to dig out information about the hospital Mika Kito was staying in from them. It was as if their mouths were glued with superglue. No matter how hard she tried, they wouldn't say a word. In the end, she could only give up. Her heart was filled with worry. It was difficult for Xiaodong to find out which hospital Mika Kito was staying in. However, it was a piece of cake for her godfather. He soon got the answer. Mika Kito was staying in the hospital where Su Xingchen was staying. This world was really strange. After burning the piece of paper in his hand, the godfather's lips curled into a mocking smile. Since Bai Tangshan had caused Xingchen to suffer so miserably, Xingchen might as well let him be executed by Xingchen. Late at night, there was no one in the hospital corridor. Suddenly, the elevator door opened, and a man wearing a black windbreaker and sunglasses walked out of the elevator. His crisp footsteps left an empty echo in the corridor. He stopped at the door of the VIP ward. His right hand, which was wearing a black glove, held the doorknob. He slowly opened the door and walked into the ward. At the same time, in a monitoring room, a handsome young man with dyed blonde hair was staring intently at the monitor screen. Seeing the black-clothed man appear and enter Su Xingchen's room, he immediately woke up his companion who was lying on the side. Gangzi, quickly take a look. Could this man be Godfather? Gangzi was still in a daze. When he heard the Godfather's name, he immediately jumped up and shouted excitedly. What? Godfather? That bastard finally appeared. The blonde guy was also very excited. That's right. Brother who asked us to monitor Su Xingchen's ward so that we can catch the Godfather. We have been monitoring him for a few days. He finally appeared. Gongzi patted his head. Don't get too excited. Although this guy is dressed in black and doesn't look like a good person, we can't be sure that he is the Godfather. Let's get a few photos first. Oh, and activate the camera in Su Xingchen's ward. The blonde guy's hands did not stop moving as he sighed. Gongzi, luckily we sneaked into Su Xingchen's ward and installed a pinhole camera. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to see the Godfather's face. When he enters the ward, he should take off his sunglasses. The monitor screen changed and showed the situation in Su Xingchen's ward. The man in the trench coat took off his sunglasses, revealing a handsome face. It was the Godfather. Godfather, why are you here? Su Xingchen saw him and quickly covered her face. The gauze on her face had been removed. Although it was not as scary as before, she still did not dare to show her face to others. The Godfather was not in a hurry to answer her question. Instead, he placed his hand on the back of her hand. Xingchen, what are you doing? Take your hand off. Be careful not to touch your wound. Su Xingchen shook her head. I won't take it off. My current appearance is so ugly that even I am afraid of myself. I don't want you to dislike me. The Godfather sat beside her and patted her shoulder. His eyes were filled with love. You are speaking nonsense again. I am your Godfather. Why would I care about these things? No matter how he comforted her, Su Xingchen refused to take her hand off. He had no choice but to give up. Xingchen, I am here to tell you that I have started to make a move on Mika Kito. He is seriously injured and hospitalized. This is the best opportunity to kill him. Not only did Bai Tangshan cause her to lose her reputation, but he also indirectly caused her to be disfigured. She hated him to the bone. When Su Xingchen heard that Bai Tangshan was injured and hospitalized, he couldn't wait to set off firecrackers to celebrate. However, although she was happy, she did not lose her rationality. She thought for a moment and asked, Godfather, when you made a move last time, did you alert the enemy? What if Mika Kito deliberately set a trap for you? The Godfather smiled with appreciation. Xingchen, it is rare for you to think of this. However, I have carefully investigated the situation. Mika Kito was seriously injured that night and was sent to his own villa. He was only sent to the hospital the next day. I also checked the doctor who operated on him and confirmed that he was sent to the hospital because his condition worsened. Otherwise, how could a person like him be hospitalized? People in the underworld were vigilant and did not want to expose themselves to the public. Then there must be a lot of guards around him. Godfather, how do you plan to get close to him? The Godfather patted her head and smiled gently. We don't have to worry about this. Money can make the devil turn millstones. If I give enough money, someone will naturally help me. Baby, I will let you see Mika Kito's tragic death as soon as possible. He was smiling gently, but his words were cruel and cold. Godfather, you are amazing. Su Xingchen was so happy that she forgot to cover her face. She happily hugged his waist. The Godfather looked down at her miserable face. There was no fear or disgust on his face. Instead, there was a bit of pity on his face. He hugged her tightly and gently patted her shoulder. They chatted for a while more before the Godfather told her to rest and left the ward. Gongzi hurriedly spoke into the headset. Old Xie, that black-clothed man walked out of Su Xingchen's room and is now walking towards the elevator. When he walks out of the hospital, you must follow him. Don't lose him. A deep man's voice came from the earpiece. Got it. The blonde said. Gongzi, we should report this to Brother Hu quickly. Okay, I will tell Brother Hu. You go to sleep first. Gongzi reported the incident with the man in black to Ahu and sent him a photo. 10 minutes later, Bailey Han, who was sleeping comfortably with Xiaodong in his arms, was woken up by Ahu's call. He glanced at Xiaodong, who was curled up in a ball, quietly got up, and walked to the balcony to answer the call. When he ended the call and returned to the room, Xiaodong sat in the middle of the bed with her hands hugging her knees. She was at a loss as tears streamed down her face. Her eyes were sad and lost, like a puppy that had been abandoned by its owner. Bailey Han's heart ached. He went forward and hugged her tightly. He kissed her hair and said gently, Honey, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? She reached out her hands and hugged him carefully. She sobbed softly. I dreamt that you were gone. When I woke up, I realized that you were really gone. I was so sad. I thought you didn't want me anymore. Bailey Han's chest ached. He gently kissed the tears on her face and said softly, Silly, why would I not want you anymore? I just went out to answer the call. I was afraid that I would wake you up. Her panicked heart gradually calmed down. She lowered her head in embarrassment and avoided his burning gaze. She said softly, I had a nightmare. That's why I cried. His cute wife was shy. Bailey Han kissed her red ear and chuckled. I know. Honey, I'm very happy. He was very happy. She was just like him, afraid of losing each other. Xiaodong felt that his laughter carried a hint of smugness. She snorted softly and turned her head away awkwardly, ignoring him. Bailey Han finally knew where Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi's awkward personalities came from. He couldn't help but smile dotingly. He carried her to the bed and held her in his arms. His heart was filled with her. Welfare, Xinwu 799. Chapter 209. Bailey Han sent the photo that Ahu had sent him late last night to Mika Kito's phone. There was a line of text below it. He is Su Xingqian's godfather. He is plotting against you. After Mika Kito received the text, she immediately called him back. Her voice was cold. Why are you helping me? Bailey Han glanced at the living room. Xiaodong was helping Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi pack their school bags. He said calmly, If something happens to you, she will be sad. I'm not helping you. I just don't want her to be sad. There was no response from the other end of the phone for a long time. After a long time, Mika Kito's deep voice came through. Is the news accurate? Bailey Han frowned. He didn't want to have too much to do with Mika Kito, but now that they were facing the same enemy, he might as well make things clear. He lowered his voice and briefly explained how he and Xiaodong were surrounded by fake reporters. He also pointed out his own suspicions. I suspect that Godfather and Su Xingqian have a close relationship. The man in black in the photo is very likely Godfather. Xiaodong and the two little guys were ready to go out. Bailey Han ended the call and walked over to them. He chuckled. Honey, I'll go with you today. That's great. The two little guys were very happy. This was the first time their father had sent them to school since the new semester started. Bailey Han walked them to the entrance of the kindergarten. He stood side by side with Xiaodong and watched them enter. Then he put his arm around Xiaodong's shoulder and said with a smile, What do we do now? Xiaodong was curious. What do you mean? Aren't you going to the office? Who said I'm going to the office? Bailey Han hugged her hand tightly. I skipped work today to accompany my wife. Xiaodong saw that everyone was looking at her. She poked his arm embarrassedly and whispered, So many people are looking. Let go. You are my wife. They like to look. Let them look. Bailey Han was not ashamed. Instead, he was proud and even raised his head proudly. Let's hurry up and get in the car. Xiaodong was afraid that he would do something worse, so she dragged his arm into the car. Hubby, is it okay if you don't go to the office today? Bailey Han was helpless and patted her head. Honey, do you want your husband to become a workaholic? It's not that. I just think that work is very important. You don't have to waste time with me. Bailey Han looked at her seriously. Accompanying you is the most important thing. How is it a waste of time? Xiaodong held his face with both hands and said seriously, "Hubby, you're so strange today. Why are you suddenly so good at talking? Did you hit your head when you went out this morning?" Bailey Han's face darkened. "Honey, don't be such a killjoy, okay? Didn't Encyclopedia of Women's Lives say that women like to hear sweet words?" He had already thrown away his pride. Why was his wife still so hard to please? Xiaodong chuckled. Sure enough, this kind of expression was more suitable for him. Bailey Han's face darkened. Xiaodong did not expect Bailey Han to bring her to Anson's office. Before entering, she grabbed his arm and whispered, "Why are we here? Is there a banquet event to attend?" He smiled mysteriously. "You'll know the answer soon." Seeing them appear, Anson's handsome face immediately broke into a smile. "Look at you two being so sweet. I'm so envious." Xiaodong was a little embarrassed. She wanted to pull her hand out of Bailey Han's arm, but he held it tightly. He said calmly, "Anson, have you prepared the things I asked you to prepare?" "They've been ready for a long time. We're just waiting for you to inspect them." Anson snapped his fingers, and his two assistants came out of the dressing room, each holding 2 wedding dresses. They unfolded the wedding dresses one by one and displayed them in front of Xiaodong. They smiled politely and said, "Mrs. Bailey, which one would you like to try first?" Xiaodong looked at the calm Bailey Han and then at the smiling Anson. She pointed at her nose and asked, "Did you prepare all these for me?" Anson winked and smiled. "That's right. Last time, when young master brought you to the press conference, he asked me to take your measurements. Then, he contacted a French designer to change the measurements of the wedding dress that had already been designed. What do you think? Are you touched?" Xiaodong keenly grasped another piece of information. "What do you mean by a wedding dress that was designed long ago?" Bailey Han suddenly emitted a cold aura. He stared at Anson with a murderous look in his sharp eyes. "I dare you to say it." Anson shrugged, revealing a fearful expression. "I'd better not say it, lest eldest young master gets angry out of humiliation and strikes me with his palm." Xiaodong looked at Bailey Han and suddenly stood in front of him. She raised her chin proudly and said righteously, "Anson, don't be afraid. Say it boldly. If Han hits you, I'll block him for you." Anson raised his eyebrows provocatively at Bailey Han. Bailey Han glared back at him. Anson immediately looked scared. "I'd better not say it." "All right, Han. Don't scare Anson." Although Xiaodong couldn't see Bailey Han's expression behind her, she could imagine that he was threatening someone. Bailey Han's face darkened. This little fool. Could it be that she couldn't tell that Anson was deliberately toying with the two of them? She was actually speaking up for that bastard. He was so angry. Anson saw that the time was right and didn't dare to continue playing. If he really angered young master, he wouldn't have a good ending. He rubbed his chin and smiled mischievously. "Mrs. Bailey, I actually started designing these wedding dresses after Ayun went to America." Xiaodong turned her head stiffly and stared at Bailey Han strangely. "You didn't design these wedding dresses for Su Yunqian to wear, did you?" Bailey Han was about to die from anger. His face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. He knocked her forehead in annoyance. "What nonsense are you thinking? Of course these were designed for you." She harumphed. "I don't believe it. Were you sure that I would marry you from that time?" When Bailey Yun had just left the country, although he had confessed to her in a hazy manner, she had rejected him. How could he have come up with such a strange idea to pre-order the wedding dresses? Bailey Han's eyes swept across the room and chased away the irrelevant people. Then, under her relentless questioning, his old face turned slightly red again. He gritted his teeth to hide his embarrassment and announced domineeringly, "I said before that I won't let go. Anyway, you'll be mine sooner or later. There's nothing wrong with designing the wedding dress in advance." It seemed that ever since they got married, she rarely saw him get angry out of embarrassment. She raised her eyebrows and deliberately provoked him. "I still don't believe it. These wedding dresses must have been designed for Su Yunqian. Otherwise, why would you change the size?" He held her shoulder with one hand and her abdomen with the other. His voice suddenly became gentle. "Little fool, the baby is growing up day by day. Shouldn't you change the size to give him enough space? Although she had already guessed that this was the reason, Xiaodong was still very touched to hear him say it personally. He seemed to be constantly bringing her surprises, letting her see his love and consideration for her. She wrapped her arms around his waist and hugged him gently. She said softly, "Thank you, hubby." Silly. Bailey Han's eyes were filled with smiles as he kissed her forehead gently. With the help of the two female assistants, Xiaodong tried on 2 sets of wedding dresses. After putting them on, she found that they were beautiful and fit her well, especially her abdomen. There was no sense of restraint. She couldn't make up her mind, so she asked Bailey Han to help her choose. Bailey Han pointed to one of the dresses and said, "I choose this one." Xiaodong raised her eyebrows and smiled. "I knew you would choose this one." Of the 2 wedding dresses, one was low-cut and backless, while the other was slightly more conservative. There was no doubt that Bailey Han had chosen the slightly more conservative one. Anson held his forehead and looked as if he couldn't bear to watch. "Mrs. Bailey, you shouldn't have put the decision in Han's hands." Xiaodong hugged Bailey Han's arm and smiled happily. "It doesn't matter. Anyway, I've already decided to only wear conservative clothes outside in the future." She didn't want someone to get jealous and smell sour. "Do you have to be like this? It's not nice to show off your love in front of a single person." Anson's face was full of tears. He was being bullied by this couple. Bailey Han completely ignored him. He held Xiaodong's waist with one hand and asked about her well-being, afraid that she would be tired. That meticulous and considerate appearance of a good husband instantly killed the 2 assistants. They couldn't help but place their hands on their chests, and their eyes were full of hearts. If she were to marry, she would marry a good husband like Bailey Han. After ordering the wedding dress, Bailey Han drove Xiaodong to the entrance of the cinema. The luxury car drove into the parking lot below the cinema, attracting a lot of attention. Bailey Han wanted to book a couple seat in the private room, but Xiaodong didn't agree. Watching a movie was like watching a big theater. If the 2 of them were to watch a movie in a small private room, they might as well go home and watch a home theater. The facilities were more comfortable than a cinema. So he accommodated her and bought 2 tickets for a comedy movie. Xiaodong saw the fragrant popcorn and couldn't help but buy a big bucket. So Bailey Han held the popcorn in one hand and Xiaodong's hand in the other and found a seat in the front row. Bailey Han sat in the dark cinema, holding Xiaodong's hand and listening to her crisp laughter from time to time. The corners of his lips were curved up. It was the first time he was watching a movie with his lover in a cinema. It was a wonderful feeling. He didn't care about the plot of the movie at all. He only cared about her mood. He suddenly leaned over to her cheek and stole a kiss. When she turned around to look at him, he whispered into her ear, "Honey, I love you." Add Song Shu 566. Chapter 210. She glanced around guiltily. Seeing that everyone else was focused on the movie, she secretly kissed him on the lips and whispered, "Hubby, I love you too." He nibbled on her ear and chuckled. "Right now, we're like students who are dating behind their parents' backs. Now that you mention it, it seems like we haven't been in a relationship before we got married. It's all your fault." Xiaodong pinched his arm to express her dissatisfaction. "Dating, getting married and having children. We're just reversing the order of normal people." He wasn't ashamed of it. Instead, he was proud of it. He raised his eyebrows proudly. "We'll get married first, then date. I can give you any kind of dating method you want." "Whoa, you make it sound so good." Xiaodong's attention was no longer on the movie. She started whispering to him in the movie theater. "Then when I get home tonight, I'll write a complete dating plan. You have to show me the ways of dating in the book." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Ahem. The people in the front row couldn't help but cough. It was true that the couple in the back row was very sweet, but it was their fault for showing off their sweetness in a public place like the movie theater. Xiaodong's cheeks were burning. She whispered, "Sorry." Then, she glared at Bailey Han. That guy actually had a calm expression on his face. It was as if he wasn't the one who did something as uncultured as whispering in the movie theater. As the wedding approached, Bailey Han and Xiaodong's relationship grew closer. Although Xiaodong didn't write a complete dating plan, he still used all the romantic cells in his body to give her a new dating experience from time to time. For example, he would give her a red rose with dew on it the moment she opened her eyes in the morning. He would ride his bicycle on a windy evening to watch the sunset on the boulevard. He would call her suddenly at work to tell her that he missed her very much, even though they had just parted ways in the morning. She was very curious and asked him why he suddenly became so romantic. He said, "Wifey, it's because I'm learning to love you better." He hadn't read those books for nothing. He loved her, and it wasn't just for show. He wanted to give her happiness. Xia Dong felt that she was very happy. However, she did not forget that there was a foreign object in his brain that could shatter their happiness at any time. There was always a corner of her heart that was filled with worry. Xia Dong was happy and worried at the same time. Asterisk in Mika Kito's VIP ward. A doctor and a nurse knocked on the door and walked in. The doctor said, "Routine check." Lu Xing, who was guarding the ward, nodded expressionlessly. The head of the person on the hospital bed was wrapped in gauze. His eyes were closed, and an oxygen tube was inserted into his nose. He was lying in a pile of instruments. The doctor carefully examined the patient's injuries while the nurse held a fountain pen in her hand and carefully recorded the situation. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door of the ward. Lu Xing went forward to open the door. Unexpectedly, there was a sudden pain in the back of his neck and his head was dizzy. He forced himself to turn around and saw that the beautiful nurse was pointing the fountain pen in her hand at his direction. He was shocked. That wasn't a fountain pen at all, but a hidden weapon that could shoot extremely thin silver needles. They are assassins. He gritted his teeth and strode forward. He wanted to fight them, but another silver needle shot out. His body was completely limp, and he had no strength to dodge it. The silver needle pierced his chest, and the strong dizziness made him unable to support himself. He fell to the ground with a thud. The male assassin said in a low voice, "Go and open the door." "Okay." The female assassin turned to open the door. Outside the door was the person who was waiting for them. The male assassin took out a syringe from his trouser pocket. There was a high concentration of potassium chloride in the syringe. In less than a minute, the person's heart would stop beating. He bent down and the syringe was getting closer and closer to Mika Kito's arm. The door opened, and before the female assassin could see the person outside the door clearly, a swift and heavy punch came towards her. She reflexively dodged. Everything happened too fast, and the male assassin had no time to care about his companions. He made up his mind and injected the syringe into Mika Kito's arm. In a split second, Mika Kito opened her eyes and reached out to grab the male assassin's arm. Her cold eyes sent chills down his spine. The male assassin attacked with his other hand, but Mika Kito dodged it easily. She tore off the oxygen tube on her nose, and they started fighting. At the same time, the female assassin was also fighting with the person outside the door. While she was unprepared, the person stabbed her heart with a dagger. The female assassin fell to the ground with a bang, right onto Lu Xing's body. Fresh blood gushed out from her chest as she unwillingly widened her eyes and stared unwaveringly at the woman standing in front of her. Trembling, she squeezed out a few words. "Vermilion bird. It's you. Since you know it's me, rest in peace." Suzaku pulled the female assassin off Lu Xing and pushed her to the side. Blood flowed everywhere. "You!" The female assassin glared at her furiously. Her body twitched rapidly, and she stopped breathing. Mika Kito had also subdued the male assassin. Soon, two of his men rushed over and cleaned up the messy ward. They cleaned up all the bloodstains as though nothing had happened. Bei Tangshen had already changed out of his hospital gown and was wearing a black suit. The gauze on his head had also been removed and thrown into the trash can. His handsome face was cold. His eyes swept over the male killer who had been knocked unconscious by him and said coldly, "Take him back." "Yes." The two men got a wheelchair from somewhere and threw the assassin onto it. They covered his head and face with a blanket and pushed him out of the hospital. Suzaku glanced at Lu Xing, who was placed on the hospital bed. "What about him?" Mika Kito said indifferently. "There can't be no patient in the ward. Make him look like me." Suzaku's mouth twitched. Even if Lu Xing is bandaged and disguised, he won't be able to create so many wounds on your body. Mika Kito was expressionless. "The doctor won't mind so much. Pretend I didn't say anything." Vermilion Bird obediently changed Lu Xing's appearance into Bei Tangshen's. She then wrapped a gauze around his head and inserted an oxygen tube into his nose, making all the necessary preparations. Poor Lu Xing. Not only did he sacrifice his own body as bait, but he was also knocked out by 2 anesthetic needles and had to pretend to be a patient. God bless him. Before Zhu Ke and Bai Tangxin left, Zhu Ke expressed her sympathy for Lu Xing in the depths of her heart. The corridor was quiet. Only their footsteps could be heard. Mika Kito walked in front of them. His black suit accentuated his figure perfectly, and he exuded a domineering aura. Suzaku followed him into the elevator. There were only the 2 of them in the empty elevator. She looked straight ahead and said indifferently, "Will they attack again? Would Lu Xing, that unlucky guy, be caught by the Godfather's men again?" Mika Kito also looked straight ahead and said indifferently, "There are still people secretly monitoring the hospital. What we need is a live witness." The male killer that they had kidnapped would be an important breakthrough for him to find out who was the mastermind. Suzaku followed Mika Kito into the basement of his villa. She felt like she was reliving an old memory. Once, she was tied to the wall by Mika Kito, just like that killer. She couldn't resist his methods and told him who was the mastermind. She wondered if this unlucky killer would confess. The killer was awakened by the cold water. His limbs were spread out and locked by the iron rings on the wall. He was stuck to the wall with his arms and legs spread out. He stared coldly at Mika Kito. Under his hateful gaze, Bai Tangxin calmly sat on the chair and flipped through the information on the table. "You're called Ghost Hand, the number 2 killer in a city." Ghost Hand didn't respond. The corners of Bai Tangxin's lips curled up as his deep gaze landed on Ghost Hand. He leaned back comfortably and said in a calm voice, "Ghost Hand, you're a smart person. If you cooperate, I won't fuss over your offense this time." Ghost Hand believed that Mika Kito was indeed extraordinary to be able to predict that the Godfather was going to kill him, set a trap to capture him, and find out his identity in such a short time. As a killer, credibility was important, but life was more important. Ghost Hand's eyes moved and he said slowly, "What do you want to know?" Mika Kito took out 2 photos from the documents and handed them to Suzaku, indicating for her to show them to Ghost Hand. Suzaku took the photos and stood in front of Ghost Hand. She held 1 photo in each hand. One of the photos was Shangguan Ao's high school graduation photo when he was 17 years old, and the other was a photo of Su Xingchen's godfather sent by Bailey Han. Mika Kito said indifferently, "I have done a biological comparison between these 2 photos, and the results show that the person in these 2 photos is the same person. You just have to tell me if the person who hired you to kill me is him." Ghost Hand looked carefully and said calmly, "Suzaku also knows the person who hired me to kill you. He is the Godfather. But none of us have seen the Godfather's true face." Mika Kito's slender fingers tapped on the table, and her lips curved into a cruel and cold smile. "So, you are useless to me." There was a bloodthirsty glint in his eyes. Naturally, Ghost Hand caught it at a glance. He said calmly, "Although I have never seen Godfather's true face, I recognize his hands." Ghost Hand was given this title because he had a pair of dexterous hands. No lock in the world could stop him, and he had never met a safe that he could not open. His hands were dexterous, so it was easy for him to notice the hands of others. For example, the Godfather with whom he had made many transactions. The Godfather has a scar of about 1 centimeter on the back of his right hand. The nail of his left thumb was pressed by something heavy, so it is flatter than the other nails. Mika Kito handed her phone to Suzaku. Zoom in on the Godfather's hands in the photo. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 211. Suzaku enlarged the picture of the Godfather's hand and projected it onto the screen. Ghost Hand looked at it carefully and said, "I'm sure that this man is the Godfather. Shangguan Ao was the Godfather." After many twists and turns, the Godfather's true identity was finally revealed. However, Mika Kito was not happy at all. She waved her hand coldly and said, "Let him go." 2 men unlocked the iron shackles on Ghost Hand's hands and feet and put him down from the wall. Blindfold him and send him out. After the men got Ghost Hand out of the villa, Suzaku raised her eyebrows and said, "I thought you wouldn't let him go." Mika Kito glanced at her and said, "There is a saying, lure the snake out of its hole." Ghost Hand had betrayed Shangguan Ao, so of course Shangguan Ao would not let him go. Just let the 2 of them fight. His cell phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID and saw that it was Bailey Han. Mika Kito answered the call and said coldly, "What's up?" Bailey Han said calmly, "My men have found the Godfather's residence." Xie Gongzi Sr. and his men had followed the Godfather for several days and finally found the Godfather's home. Mika Kito wrote down the address he gave. After a moment of silence he said, "I found out the Godfather's true identity. His name is Shangguan Ao, and he is the younger brother of Shangguan Bo, the CEO of Hunglong Group. I will protect Xia Xia." Bailey Han knew that he was telling him about this to raise his vigilance, so that Shangguan Ao would not hurt Xia Xia. Mika Kito ended the call in silence. His body suddenly leaned against the chair like a towering mountain, and his whole body exuded an extremely oppressive aura. Suzaku quietly left the basement, leaving the whole space to him. She crossed her arms and leaned against the wall at the door lazily, waiting for his call. When she realized what was going on, she was shocked. When did she become so servile? Evening. Mika Kito and Suzaku stood outside the Godfather's villa in their night suits. Hackers had already hacked the surveillance cameras in the villa and replaced them with fake information. Suzaku turned her head and looked at the tall man beside her. She frowned and tried to stop him for the last time. "You're injured. Are you sure you want to do it yourself? This kind of injury won't kill me." In fact, when he moved, the wound would still hurt, but the grudge between him and his godfather had to be resolved by himself before he would be satisfied. Suzaku shrugged helplessly. "Since you don't care about your own life, I don't need to stop you." Mika Kito looked at her coldly. "You're underestimating me. Why don't we have a bet to see who can kill more people? Just the two of us." According to the news, there were at least 20 bodyguards in the Godfather's villa, not counting the assassins and security guards under his command. "What? Are you scared?" Mika Kito's lips curved into a mocking smile. "So, the number one female assassin is nothing more than this. Damn male chauvinist. Why would I be scared? What a joke." Suzaku gritted her teeth and retorted, "I'm worried that your wound will tear and you won't be able to fend off the enemy. I don't have the strength to carry you out. Are you sure you don't want to ask one of your men to carry you out?" Mika Kito's facial muscles twitched uncontrollably. He was exuding a cold aura. "The loser of the bet has to agree to one condition of the winner." "Okay, deal." Suzaku high-fived him. The two of them were like cheetahs as they nimbly flipped over the 4-meter-tall wall. After landing lightly on the ground, the two of them quickly hid their figures and very tacitly, one in front and one behind, quietly lurked towards the villa under the night sky. Bei Tangshen walked in front. His eyes quickly glanced at the surveillance cameras in the surroundings, and then cast his gaze on the small attic opposite the garden. There was a surveillance point there, and a sentry was standing there. Vermilion Bird had also noticed it. She quickly observed and discovered that there was only one man in the attic. So without waiting for Bei Tangshen to make a move, she took the initiative to pull out a silencer gun from her waist and aimed it at the man's forehead. She suddenly shot, and the man fell on the small attic with a plop. Vermilion Bird tilted her head to look at Bei Tangshen, only to see that the moment she killed someone, he had already moved to the front of the villa and grabbed the throat of a patrolling bodyguard with one hand. Under the dim light, his face was expressionless, but his eyes were cold. "Lao Si, what happened?" Someone heard the thud from the attic and shouted at the top of his lungs. Suzaku pounced on the man the moment he walked up to the attic. She covered his mouth with her left hand and aimed at his forehead with her right hand. She pulled the trigger. Blood spurted out. She nimbly avoided the blood and hooked his body with one leg. She slowly lowered him to the ground to prevent him from making a loud noise. Mika Kito looked back at her. She raised her eyebrows and held up 2 fingers to indicate that she had killed 2 people. He stood motionless in the same place. Suddenly, like lightning, he pulled out a silencer and aimed in the direction of Vermilion Bird. Vermilion Bird's movement stiffened as she heard the sound of someone falling to the ground behind her. It turned out that she was proud of her achievement and did not notice that someone was approaching her. Under the light, she could clearly see the mocking smile on his face. She gritted her teeth in anger, but she could not do anything. She was too careless and almost lost her life. Bei Tangshen saved Vermilion Bird's life, but the sound of Vermilion Bird falling to the ground attracted the attention of the other bodyguards. Someone discovered the corpse on the ground and shouted, Someone is invading, everyone be alert. The lights outside the villa suddenly lit up. The whole garden was as bright as day. Mika, Kito and Suzaku were instantly exposed under the light. They calmly faced the intruders with guns in their hands and directly barged into the villa. The two of them were like asuras from hell. They reeked of blood, their faces were cold, and their eyes were bloodthirsty. Everywhere they passed, they left behind stiff corpses. The smell of blood permeated the air, and the whole villa became lifeless. Blood flowed like a river. They stepped over the corpses and went upstairs. The godfather didn't expect that his nest had been exposed. He was still on the bed with the two beauties. Suddenly, he heard a hurried knock on the door. "Boss, there's an assassin. We can't hold them off." The godfather's eyes suddenly turned cold. He pushed the beauty under him away, grabbed the bathrobe on the ground and hurriedly wrapped it around himself. He reached for the bedside table and took out the gun. "Brother Ao, don't leave me behind. I'm so scared." One of the beauties saw the godfather running away with the gun and quickly hugged his leg. "Get lost." The godfather mercilessly kicked her away. Bang, bang, bang. The godfather broke the light bulbs in the garden first, and the garden returned to darkness. The moment he jumped out of the window, the door of the room was kicked open by Beitang Shen. He turned a blind eye to the beauties lying on the bed and quickly ran to the window, only to see a black shadow rushing into the garden. He raised the gun and shot at the black shadow. Unfortunately, he only hit the shadow once. After that, he ran into the dark shadow and could no longer see where he was. At this time, Vermilion Bird, who was downstairs, had already chased out of the hall. From her position, she just happened to see her godfather jump into the pool under the rockery. She chased after him and fiercely shot at the pool until she ran out of bullets and could no longer pull the trigger. "How is it?" Mika Kito jumped out of the window and ran to her side. Streams of blood came out of the pool, but the godfather's body did not turn up for a long time. He ran away. There must be a trap in the pool. Suzaku frowned. "I shot his leg. He can't run far." Mika Kito said coldly, "Tell Lu Xing to go after Shangguan Ao." "Got it." Suzaku relayed his order to Lu Xing through the headset. The whole villa was now dead. Except for the two naked women in the godfather's room, there was no other living thing. Suzaku looked up at the godfather's room and reminded him faintly, "The two women saw your face." Mika Kito strode out. He did not want to stay here any longer. His cold voice drifted from the front. "They can't say a word." At first, Vermilion Bird thought that he had silenced them. Later, she learned from Lu Xing that he had forcibly fed them poison. This kind of poison would damage their brain nerves. After 12 hours, they would become crazy, commonly known as mental patients. The two of them swaggered out of the villa. A Maybach was parked 100 meters away. Mika Kito stood in front of the back door of the car. "You drive." Suzaku raised her eyebrows and did not object. She quickly opened the car door for him. He bent over and sat in the back seat. She closed the door and jumped into the driver's seat. She stepped on the accelerator and sped away at a fast speed. She looked at him through the rearview mirror. He was leaning against the seat with his eyes closed. His brows were slightly furrowed, as if he was enduring great pain. Her gaze moved down and landed on his chest. The black night suit seemed to have darkened, as if it had been drenched by water. She frowned, suspecting that the wound on his chest had torn open and blood was seeping out. She accelerated to the maximum speed. The black Maybach sped on the road like a cheetah. When they returned to the villa, Mika Kito's body swayed when he got out of the car. He supported his chest with one hand. Suzaku reached out to help him. He said coldly, "No need." This man, even if he was injured, he would not forget to maintain his dignity. Suzaku stared at his back. Her long eyelashes drooped slightly. The doctor examined Beitang Shen. He took off his night suit, revealing his broad and muscular chest. The gauze that was wrapped around his chest had indeed been stained with blood. The doctor sighed. "Ah Shen, the wound has ruptured again. Based on this situation, when will the injury get better? You can't continue to be so willful." Welfare Song Shu 566. Chapter 212. The doctor was Japanese and spoke in Japanese, so Suzaku could barely understand him. When she heard the word willful, she couldn't help but giggle. Mikakito looked up at her unhappily. She stood with her hands behind her back, puffed out her chest, and looked straight ahead with an expressionless face. It was as if the giggle didn't come from her. The doctor's name was Miyamoto Hanzo, and he was an old man in his 50s. He used to work for Mikakito's father, Hoitang Tsuruchi, for many years. He was a senior in the Yamaguchi-gumi, so he treated Mikakito as an uncle and niece. He didn't have too many scruples when he spoke. As he treated Mikakito's wound, he grumbled, "My medical skills are very good, but when I encounter an uncooperative patient, there's really nothing I can do." Suzaku's expressionless face gradually opened up a crack. Click. It twitched. Beitang Shen furrowed his brows. He didn't expect that Tang Wulin would become more and more outrageous. He muttered in a low voice, "I think it's better to find someone to watch over you so that you don't waste my medicine and gauze." Mikakito's frown deepened. "Uncle Hanzo, you're getting older. You're getting more and more naggy." Miyamoto Hanzo rebandaged his wound and glared at him. "If you weren't so willful, why would I be naggy?" He looked up at Suzaku, who was looking straight ahead. He smiled and said, "Suzaku, I'll leave Shin to you. At least let him rest in Gigai for 3 days." Suzaku's mouth twitched. "Uncle Miyamoto, are you sure you're talking to me?" "Of course it's you, Xiao Quebec. Among the young people in the Yamaguchi-gumi, you're the only one who dares to shout at Shin." Miyamoto Hanzo took off his rubber gloves and patted Suzaku's shoulder with a smile. "So, I'll leave this difficult task to you." Although Miyamoto Hanzo was old, his strength was not weak. Suzaku was caught off guard and was slapped by him. The corner of her mouth twitched even more. "Uncle Miyamoto, are you sure you don't have a grudge against me?" She wanted her to go against Mikakito and make that domineering man listen to her? This was simply a dream. But wait. Suzaku's mind flashed. Back in Shangguan Ao's villa, she had a competition with Mikakito to see who could kill more people. "You still owe me a favor." Suzaku crossed her arms and stared at Mikakito. Mikakito frowned. Suzaku raised her eyebrows. "If you had killed those 2 women, you would have killed one more person than me. But you let them go, so you've lost. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to accept defeat." "Why? Are you trying to go back on your word? Tell me your condition." Mikakito had almost forgotten that they had made a bet. "My condition is that you're not allowed to move around for the next 3 days, and you're not allowed to do anything dangerous." She smiled and said calmly, "It's best if you stay in bed and rest." Mikakito stared at her with her sharp eyes. She was suspicious. "I thought you would let me restore your freedom." She shrugged nonchalantly and patted Miyamoto Hanzo's shoulder. "Who asked Uncle Hanzo to be so naggy?" Miyamoto Hanzo didn't understand Chinese, but from their expressions, he could tell that Suzaku had convinced Mikakito. He grinned and said, "I'll get going first. Xiaokei, you have to keep an eye on Shen for me." Miyamoto Hanzo's short figure slipped away. Suzaku said calmly, "You heard what Uncle Hanzo said. You're under my control for the next 3 days. You've got guts." Mikakito stared at her sharply. "I'm not gutsy, but I have a good memory. I always remember that the loser has to obey the winner's conditions," she said calmly. If he had known, he wouldn't have been soft-hearted and spared the lives of those 2 women. "Take your medicine." She opened the medicine bottle left by Miyamoto Hanzo and poured out the pills. She took a glass of water and handed it to him. Did she really think that he was a 3-year-old child who needed to be looked after all the time? Mikakito's mouth twitched. Although he was unhappy, he had to accept his loss. He took the pills angrily and swallowed them. After a tiring night and the sedative in the medicine, Mikakito fell asleep quickly. After Suzaku made sure that he was asleep, she left the room and stretched. She was too lazy to go home, so she found a guest room to rest. The godfather was indeed a sly old fox. When Lu Xing and the others were following his orders, they did find a cleverly designed mechanism at the bottom of the pool. It was a stone door. After entering the stone door, they walked through a dark tunnel. When they climbed out, they were already in the river behind the villa. A speedboat was tied to a wooden pile by the river. But now the speedboat was gone, and the bloodstains extended all the way here. It was obvious that the godfather had escaped on the speedboat. But even if he escaped, it was useless. Mika Kito had issued an arrest warrant for him in the underworld. At this time, the godfather had already escaped from the villa area using a speedboat. When he bought this villa, he had already planned his escape route. The small river outside the villa led to the estuary. If he went all the way down, he would reach the harbor. Soon, he would be able to use his connections to get a ticket to leave the country. But he couldn't leave the country because he couldn't abandon Su Xingqian. Moreover, he didn't believe that Mika Kito was powerful enough to dig him out of a city. The river was getting wider and wider. He stopped the speedboat and found the first aid kit on the speedboat. Biting the soft stick, he dug out the bullet from his leg and then the bullet from his arm. The pain made him break out in a cold sweat and he almost fainted. He endured the pain and bandaged his wound. He sat weakly in the cabin with sweat dripping from his forehead. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. The villa's address was exposed, but he still had other places to stay. He made a call and asked one of his most trusted men to pick him up at the harbor. He then found a tea house near the harbor and dragged his injured leg to wait inside. But he never expected that he would run into that woman, Su Yunqian. Su Yunqian came down from the private room with a foreign man. The foreign man was tall and handsome. He had a charming smile on his face as he hugged her waist. They were as intimate as a couple. The godfather's eyes flashed and he suddenly called out, "Miss Su Yunqian." Su Yunqian was about to leave the tea house with the foreign man when she heard someone calling her. She turned around in surprise and saw a middle-aged man sitting in front of the window waving at her. She pursed her lips and whispered something in the foreign man's ear. Then, she walked towards the godfather. She looked at the man in front of her quietly. His face was pale and he was wrapped in a bathrobe. His left arm and leg were stained with blood. A look of disgust flashed in her eyes and she asked condescendingly, "Who are you?" The godfather smiled meaningfully. "Godfather." Su Yunqian's face changed color. She looked at him carefully and asked suspiciously, "Are you really the godfather? Wasn't the godfather very powerful? How did he become like this?" "He was like a perverted vagrant." The godfather smiled. "The last time we talked on the phone, you gave me something. I haven't thanked you properly." "You don't have to say it. I believe you are." Su Yunqian knew that he was referring to the time when she gave him the drug sample. Naturally, she believed his identity. She said calmly, "How did you become like this?" The godfather smiled bitterly. "It's a long story. I want to talk to you." He looked up at the foreign man who was waiting for Su Yunqian at the entrance of the tea house. "Why don't you let your friend leave first?" Su Yunqian looked at him deeply. "You better have something important to talk to me about." "I won't let you down." "All right then. Wait for me for a few minutes." Su Yunqian walked to the foreign man and hooked her arm around his. They walked out of the tea house and she said in English, "Darling, I met an old friend. I want to talk to him for a while. You can go back to the hotel first." The foreign man held her waist with one hand and lowered his head. He looked at her beautiful face with a smile. "Baby, it's not easy for me to come to China. Don't you want to stay with me for a while?" Su Yunqian wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him on the lips. She said gently, "Darling, I'll visit you tomorrow. Be good." "All right, you heartless woman." The man shrugged and kissed her sexy red lips. After tasting them for a long time, he let go of her reluctantly. He bit her earlobe and threatened her in a low voice. "You're not allowed to sleep with him." Su Yunqian punched him in the chest. "Please, I don't want that old man even if you give him to me." The man chuckled and let go of her. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and narrowed his eyes. He watched her graceful figure walk towards the godfather and a cold smile appeared on his sexy lips. Su Yunqian sat elegantly in the seat opposite the godfather and said indifferently, "What do you want to talk to me about?" The godfather's shrewd eyes flickered and he smiled. "It seems that Miss Su has already given up on Bailey Han." That foreign man seemed to be her new lover. She took a sip of tea elegantly and put down the teacup gently. "So what if I give up? So what if I don't give up?" "If you've already given up, we can end our conversation here. If you haven't, I'll be happy to work with Miss Su." Su Yunqian raised her charming eyes and looked at him. Tell me. Who knows? I might be interested in your proposal. In other words, she hadn't given up on Bailey Han. The godfather's lips curled into a smile. In 2 days, Bailey Han and Xia Dong will be getting married. Don't you want to give them a gift? She smiled meaningfully. A gift? I've been thinking about it, but I don't have a good choice. Do you have any suggestions? The godfather leaned forward and whispered something in her ear. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. What benefits will you get if you do this? Benefits, Hongcha 866. Chapter 213. The godfather's eyes turned cold. My target is Mika Keto. That's too roundabout. Why not? Let's cast a long line to catch a big fish. Moreover, he was injured and his power had been damaged. He needed some time to recuperate. She looked around and smiled. Okay, I agree to work with you. The godfather raised his teacup and smiled coldly. I wish us a happy cooperation. Su Yunqian also raised her teacup and clinked it with his. Happy cooperation. The preparations for the wedding had been completed. Xia Dong started to feel nervous when she remembered that they would be preparing for the wedding the next day. Bailey Han pulled her out of the door and said that he wanted to take her somewhere. He drove her to the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. After she got out of the car, she turned to look at him in confusion. He held her hand and smiled. Honey, let's go visit Mother. I hope she won't be angry and blame us for coming too late. So that's what happened. Xia Dong felt a lump in her throat. Her heart was filled with gratitude. He took out a bouquet of lilies from the back seat and held her hand as they walked to Xia Ling's tombstone. He placed the lilies in front of the tombstone, straightened his back and said sincerely, Mom, my name is Bailey Han. I married your daughter and will protect her from the wind and rain from now on. We will be holding our wedding tomorrow. Although you won't be able to be there, I hope you can see Xia's happy smile in heaven. Xia Dong burst into tears. She squatted in front of the tombstone and stroked the small photo. She sobbed and said, Mom, I'm very happy now. Please bless us so that we'll be safe and happy forever. Mom, if you're in heaven, you must bless Ah Han so that he won't suffer anymore. You must bless Xiao Guai so that she can recover soon. After coming out of the cemetery and walking on the tree-lined path, Xia Dong suddenly stopped in her tracks. She stared at the man in front of her. She squeezed Bailey Han's hand excitedly. Bailey Han comfortingly patted the back of her hand and stood there with her, watching as Xia Zhenxing slowly approached with a bouquet of chrysanthemums. Xia Zhenxing also saw the two of them and his expression was awkward for a moment. However, he still took heavy steps and approached them under Xia Dong's cold gaze. Xia Dong looked at him coldly. Who told you that my mother's tombstone is here? Xia Zhenxing's expression stiffened. I asked your uncle. My mother doesn't want to see you. She was like a kitten, her fur standing on end, ready to attack at any time. Xia, you're getting married tomorrow. No matter what, I'm your father. I want your mother to know about this as well. Xia Zhenxing looked at her uneasily with a pitiful expression. You don't have to worry about these things. I'll tell Mom myself. Xia Dong clenched her hands into fists and stared at him. Go away. Don't appear in front of Mom. Xia, tears welled up in Xia Zhenxing's eyes. At this moment, he no longer had the handsome demeanor of a young man, nor the elegance of a wealthy family. All he had was the sorrow of an old man with one foot in the grave. Honey, don't be so agitated. Be careful not to hurt the baby. Bailey Han put his arm around Xia Dong's shoulder and comforted her gently. Don't be angry. Let me talk to Mr. Xia for a while. You go back to the car first, okay? Xia Dong took a deep breath and tried to calm down. She didn't know why, but when she saw that man, she couldn't help but feel indignant and resentful. She knew that it wasn't worth it, but she couldn't help it. She kept repeating in her heart, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. She didn't look at Xia Zhenxing anymore, only Bailey Han in her eyes. Okay, come back quickly. Only Bailey Han and Xia Zhenxing were left on the boulevard. Although Xia Zhenxing didn't have any self-respect in front of his daughter, in front of his son-in-law, he was imposing. He puffed out his chest and raised his head with a serious expression. Bailey Han, I know I'm not worthy of being a father and have no right to criticize Xia, but I'm still her father. I'm handing her over to you, so I hope you can treat her well. Bailey Han didn't show the slightest hint of ridicule or disdain. He said seriously, you don't have to worry about that. I'll treat her well. No matter what, you're still Xia's father and I'll respect you. However, for tomorrow's wedding, Xia intends to let uncle hold her hand and walk her into the church. Xia Zhenxing smiled bitterly. I understand. I don't have the face to attend the wedding. Ming Yuan has always treated her like his own daughter. With him entrusting Xia to you, I don't have any regrets. Bailey Han didn't want to say more. He nodded his head and said goodbye. He took a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. Without looking back, he asked calmly, if you could choose again, would you still abandon Xia and her mother? Xia Zhenxing's heart suddenly hurt. He didn't know how to answer. He had made this choice because he had no other choice, but the result wasn't what he had expected. But if he hadn't made this choice, the result would have been even worse. His silence made his attitude clear. Bailey Han's eyes turned cold. How dare he still not repent? If he wasn't Xia's father, he really wanted to beat him up. Back in the car, Xia sat in the front passenger seat. She lowered the glass and looked into the distance. She didn't come back to her senses until he opened the car door. She looked back at him and smiled faintly. What took you so long? He stroked her hair, feeling sorry for her. I wanted to beat him up, but I couldn't decide, so it took me some time. She smiled. Don't beat him up. Otherwise, you'll be struck by lightning. After all, he's an elder. She seemed to have thought of something, and the smile on her face froze. He asked with concern, what's wrong? She smiled stiffly. Do you think I'll be struck by lightning? My attitude towards him was so bad. I can't even be considered filial. No, God of Thunder will understand your difficulties. He pulled her into his arms and stroked her hair gently. We'll treat him better in the future. After all, he's an elder. She buried her head in his arms. After a long time she said, okay. Before he came back, she thought a lot. She was now a mother of 3, so she shouldn't be angry anymore. Maybe she should try to let go of the hatred in her heart. Bailey's eldest son, Bailey Han, and Xia Dong's wedding was held in the church as scheduled. Accompanied by the beautiful wedding march, Xia Dong held Gao Ming Yuan's arm and walked into the church leisurely. 2 cute little flower girls walked behind them, holding on to Xia Dong's wedding dress. Their delicate little faces had sweet smiles. Those with sharp eyes could recognize them at a glance. They were Bailey Han and Xia Dong's precious sons, Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao. Xia Dong was wearing a pure white wedding dress. Her black hair was tied up in a high bun, revealing her snow-white neck. Around her neck was a ruby necklace that shone with a mesmerizing luster. The design of her chest and abdomen was smooth, outlining her perfect curves. The layers of the skirt were dotted with broken diamonds like stars. In the morning light, she walked slowly and gracefully, like a fairy who was riding the waves. At this moment, she was the most perfect bride. She was so beautiful that people couldn't help but hold their breath. Everyone's eyes fell on her, but there was only one person in her eyes. The man standing at the end of the red carpet, waiting for her. Dressed in a white suit, Bailey Han stood tall and straight. There was an elegant and charming smile on his godlike handsome face. His obsidian-like eyes were filled with deep love as he watched her approach him. Gao Mingyuan solemnly handed Xia Dong's hand to Bailey Han. This was a lifetime of trust and a lifetime of responsibility. His eyes couldn't help but redden. Bailey Han also solemnly held Xia Dong's hand and solemnly promised, I will love Xia Dong for the rest of my life. I will never leave her. The priest began to preside over the wedding. Is there anyone here who can provide a valid reason to point out that the marriage of the 2 newlyweds is not legal? Suzaku couldn't help but glance at Mika Kito beside her. He looked forward expressionlessly, as if he didn't hear the priest's words. She really didn't understand why he dragged his injured body to Xia Dong's wedding. Wasn't he looking for trouble? Su Yunqian gritted her teeth, made up her mind, and suddenly stood up. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Everyone's gazes turned to her. Other than the entire Bailey family, there were also people from the Su family, as well as all the influential people in City A. Everyone knew that Su Yunqian and Bailey Han once had a relationship. They all stared at her as if they were waiting to watch a good show. The expressions of the Bailey family members changed. Worried that she would say something inappropriate, Madame Su quickly tugged at her arm and said in a low voice, "Yunqian, what are you doing? Sit down quickly." The priest also looked at her and asked, "Madam, do you think the marriage of the two newlyweds is not legal?" Su Yunqian pulled her arm out of Mrs. Su's grip and smiled elegantly. "No, I agree with their marriage. However, the groom and I are good friends. I want to give him a song as a gift." Yunqian. Mrs. Su's expression darkened. She pulled her arm and tried to change her mind. However, she smiled and said, "Mommy, trust me. It's really just a gift." The priest nodded in agreement. The Bailey family couldn't stop her at all. She smiled elegantly. A blessing for the wedding for the groom and the bride. In the silent church, her beautiful voice sounded, but the lyrics made everyone's expression change drastically. "My invitation card is your wedding invitation card. Everything you wanted has now become my heartbreak. You're always too sober, and I can't get drunk. You even forced me to give you my blessings. Your wedding invitation card is my invitation card. You invited me to raise my glass, and I can only return the toast. Everyone here knows that we used to be so good. Now that my heart is broken, you still want me to smile." Su Yunqian's eyes were filled with tears at the end of the song. Her sorrowful expression attracted the sympathy of many people who didn't know the truth. Awesome novel, Xinwu 799. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.